Okay, it's 1:02 p.m. on October 15th, 2021. I'm going to call the Grand County Budget Advisory Board meeting to order. Present, we've got Zach Wachezek, Quinn Hall, Mary McGann, Kevin Walker, Chris Coffin, and myself on the Budget Advisory Board. We've also got Mallory Natsau, Matt Seniceros present.
We didn't know this was by Zoom, so we're over here, but we can go back to our office.
Oh, hold on a sec. How do you want to do it? Everything's going to be on Zoom.
Okay, well, we should go back then, because I don't even have a computer with me, just Terry has her laptop.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah, however you want to do it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Christina showed up in person. Anyway, let's proceed with approval of the minutes for October 1st. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes, there's a second.
Okay, does anybody have any comments or corrections? Okay, so I'll call the motion for the October 1st minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, sounds like the motion passes unanimously. Next up, we've got October 8th minutes. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the October 8th minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, that's Quinn seconds. Kevin makes the motion. Any comments or corrections on the minutes for October 8th? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Share my screen and get budget software up. Let's see, first off is the attorney, but while we wait for Christina and Terry to log on after they get back over across the street. Not everything's entered in. I've got some placeholders in for some general fund departments, but right now our bottom line is we've got $3,121,000 to work with. But that's, there's quite a bit of work just to even get caught up with the salary and benefits status quo. And some of the departments I just have placeholders in who haven't entered their budgets yet, but just to give kind of a rough idea of where our general fund bottom line's looking. So we still do have some money to work with, and this isn't including any of the carryover from our Airport CARES Act or ARPA money. So just as an explanation, I think that it's probably important for us to not create annual ongoing obligations in the county, factoring in those grants because they're only going to be around for maybe a couple more years and in diminishing amounts. And so I'm going to try to balance our ongoing general fund budget, especially before I plug that money in, just so we can track our bottom line against a true budget that we'll be looking at down the road. So anyway, just wanted to give an update on that. A lot of this is probably going to disappear once we, update our salary and benefits for next year, and that's just the status quo. And then on top of that, we're working on a salary survey and especially some adjustments on the bottom end of the pay scale, which is going to eat into that quite a bit also. Anyway, it looks like Christina has joined, and so let's go ahead and move to the attorney's budget.
I have joined, but FYI, Terry didn't have an invite, so I just forwarded that to her, and she is logging on also.
Okay. So it sounds like actually most of it's
It's basically
a lot,
the
a
same.
lot the same.
Yeah, a couple of tiny increases.
Do you want to wait for Terry or?
Not really, but we can, if I have a question for her, we have a question for her, we can punt until she logs in, but she should be doing that now.
Okay. And maybe, yeah, so.
The only,
Oh, go ahead.
well, yeah, the only two line items we are proposing an increase are in subscriptions. That is because Colleen, our new chief deputy, does want Westlaw. That is the best legal research subscription service. We used to have it. Matt and I didn't use it, so we cut it out of a prior budget. And then you can't get on. Terry can't get on, but that's fine. She's in my office. We'll just double team it from here.
Okay.
So that includes that. There's also a little bit of cushion there because we, all of our laptops are not compliant with new CGIS law about certain protections they have to access, say, criminal histories, and some of these are protected by law. Matt has been working for a while, ever since Colleen got here, because she pointed that out. It wasn't something I was even aware of before. So there is something called the MDM that Matt is looking into, sort of the best and most efficient way to put on our all of our mobile devices. And so the criminal team uses iPads in court, and then, you know, a couple of people, not everyone, has laptops also. I don't really know, should that go in subscriptions and should that go in inventory, but it's something that we need to get in place, and I have no idea of the cost. And Matt's still doing quite a bit of research, because the only way he knows to approach it is it would have to be a countywide thing versus a Grand County attorney's thing. So anyway, we bumped that up for both Westlaw and potentially a little bit of padding for MDM, although we also have some padding in our inventory line for that MDM process.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I got an email from Matt a little earlier, maybe yesterday. There's a couple options. I think like a countywide option is like $75,000, but just the criminal side. I'm not sure if you know exactly which departments he was talking about, but there was a possibility of doing a $30,000 option also, which may include the courts. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Because I don't know if Justice Court needs the same kind of security or not. I guess we can bring that up with Matt a little bit.
They would, because we run the same criminal histories and all that stuff in Justice Court.
Yeah, and so I think whatever the cost is going to be would be
A Matt item.
Justice Court.
It's going to be substantial one way or the other.
Say that. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Matt. You want to just explain where you're at on that?
I'd be happy to a little bit, because some of these terms kind of get convoluted into one or the other. The email I sent you yesterday, like I said, I don't really want to water this meeting down with all of the ins and outs and logistics of all of this. But there is network upgrades and some other stuff that needs to happen here one way or the other at the county. And part of that posturing takes care of ensuring a secure connection for remote workers and those workers that possibly could be accessing sensitive information on mobile devices, which may or may not include laptops, but mostly is geared towards light OS devices like tablets and phones, that kind of stuff. Without getting way out in the weeds on compliance and what that entails, the email I sent to you yesterday talks a bit about a secure workspace. And this is a solution that would be compliant. The 30 grand that I threw out there is MSRP, and that would cover up to 30 users, which would include all the attorney's office, the sheriff's office, plus the justice courts as well. But that also doesn't take care of all of the other network upgrades and things that need to happen. One way or the other, in regards to budgeting, I wouldn't necessarily throw that budget on the backs of an independent department at this point, just because of the nature of how all these network protections kind of come into it. Not to mention that there's a substantial cost with them. So I don't know if they would actually be capitalized, even though that they're subscription-based models.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's complex.
I think all the users would be in the general fund, though. So we're talking about law enforcement, county attorney, and justice court. They're all in the general fund. So, I mean, the general fund is basically one big budget, all combined, and it has to balance with itself. And so it doesn't really matter whose department we put it in. We could split it out or put it in non-department or whatever. Doesn't matter because it's all in the general fund. And so I guess when we figure that out, Matt, we'll figure out where to put it in the budget. We might split it out among the departments that use it based on how many users, or whatever.
Yeah.
But like I say, it doesn't really matter where in the budget it ends up because it's just going to be in the general fund somewhere.
Exactly. And so that's all I was going to say is in this regard, on this line item and what you're looking at here, I wouldn't necessarily throw it there as an initial. We can have this conversation again, and I'm assuming I'm going to have to come back to the budget advisory board with some better numbers here after you and I sit down and chat this out a little bit.
Matt, I had a quick question. Do we know how other rural Utah counties are handling this?
It's an evolving thing. Every county kind of treats it in a different regard. Some just put their foot down and say that you don't access it remotely, and you must come into the facility or access the facility through a VPN connection. Others are a bit more pervasive and allow mobile users. It's a bit of a toss-up, but it's definitely something that I do discuss, or I have discussed with the other IT directors across the state. And then, another part that has kind of really impacted all of this is the COVID situation, and as I term it, the work from home revolution. There's so many remote workers, and it's really kind of changed the game in a lot of different ways on how that impacts. And so there's a number of different manufacturers and solutions that have pushed into the market fairly significantly this year. And I don't want to put us, as far as a solution is concerned, I don't want to put us behind the buck. I don't want to put us into something that is continually cumbersome, but is compliant and expensive. I'm trying to get the best return on our value while providing the best user experience, the best performance that we can for our buck. So it's,
But did I understand you correctly to say that something as simple as a VPN might work? Or
yes and no. A VPN by itself is part of it. When you start talking light devices, like tablets, smartphones, that kind of stuff, those also need to have a mobile device management system integrated as well. That ensures that the endpoint device has various security permissions and pieces put on it. And then the VPN facilitates the transaction. And then there's also parts that go into, approved applications, how some of those pieces are accessed, where they're accessed. And then we get audited on all this stuff every year too. So the VPN can be part of it. But it's multifaceted.
But would everything be simpler if we just wanted to allow, the heavy devices like laptops to access it, and people couldn't use tablets or phones? Would that bring the cost down?
That's how I've handled it in the past with the sheriff's office, the justice court, and the attorney's office really too. Is that with laptops and otherwise, if you're going to be accessing sensitive information, you're essentially doing it via that connection. The attorney's office has definitely evolved a bit with the addition of Colleen. And like I said, with the remote working situation in there too, it's something that we would, I think, be better addressed by getting an appropriate solution rather than just trying to throw a VPN and, you know, kind of half-baked solutions at it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that does. Thank you.
That's a good segue to another subscription thing that we've half-baked in the past, which is our general software for filing cases and cataloging cases, and we don't have any of that. We also have struggled with UCGIS compliance for storage. Matt has worked with us to try to get, well, we have an external server because we thought actually in the beginning that Drive was UCGIS compliant, and that the conversion to Drive was going to help fix that. It's not, it turns out. We worked on last year getting an external server, but it's quite clunky actually working between sort of the system we have now, which is essentially Dropbox and Word, and the external server. The state, Utah Prosecution Council, has been doing a pilot program for software that's both filing and tracking and storage called eProsecutor. They have had subsidized licenses, but those are all given out to these pilot counties. So we missed the boat on that. We did admittedly try it, and Matt and Emily in particular did not like it. You know, the Dropbox system in a lot of ways is really easy and quick and efficient on the front side, but we do lose a lot of advantage on the back side by not using one of these prosecutor software programs that updates law every single year with legislative changes. It obviously helps you catalog cases. We don't have a good way to search our caseload, what kind of cases we have, which ones are special victim cases, which ones aren't, which ones are felonies, which ones are misdemeanors, which ones settle, which ones don't. We have to manually go in and track all that. This is another evolution with Colleen. She's not happy with that and not used to that coming from Salt Lake County DA's office. So she really wants us to try eProsecutor again. She has counseled us on the advantages in the big picture, even though maybe obviously there's some growing pains with learning the system, but beyond that, yes, maybe inputting the initial cases is a little bit more painful than our wonderful Dropbox easy situation, but the advantages to eProsecutor in the big picture are much bigger than that. So we don't actually have that price because we contacted UPC and they said, no, we don't have any more licenses. Their licenses subsidized are only $150 a user. We would have, I guess, 5 users, and we're guessing that non-subsidized price is double that, but we don't have that number. And so that's another thing about $1,500 of a 6 users. Well, that would include me, right? Which I wouldn't need one.
If I might say one thing about eProsecutor, and I agree that it's great to track your cases and it's necessary in a number of ways. One of the issues with it that we uncovered when we were running it initially is that their storage on their back end is very limited. And so when we started suggesting about, uploading evidence and that kind of stuff into it, they more or less told us to put the brakes on it and not do that. So like you alluded to, there are going to be some growing pains to it. But, ongoing maintenance of evidence and access to all this data heavy stuff, particularly when we start talking video and photos and all this other stuff, we're still going to have a solution that's in there, whether that's Dropbox or Drive or, whatever it might be.
That's a good point. And I think that was one of the reasons too, we just rejected it. We weren't psyched on it.
They had limitations.
Yeah, Matt obviously works with us on all of this. We can't come up with a great solution, but I do think it's pretty limiting. We don't have any software where we can just pull reports on our caseloads and our cases. So, maybe it isn't eProsecutor in the end, but we got to figure out something.
I think it'd be eProsecutor in conjunction with something.
Yeah. Okay. So that's another potential subscription item. So we increased the subscription budget. We didn't increase our inventory budget, but we feel strongly we want to keep it where it is. And there could potentially be some padding in the inventory budget that really we'd end up using for more like a subscription item like e-prosecutor. So
All right,
that's
so
a
how much,
very long explanation of the increase to the subscriptions.
so how much is the Westlaw?
2,000, I think is what we priced. Is that right, Terry?
They priced me out at $158 a month.
158 times.
So it's like just under $1,900.
Yeah, so,
And that would be until October of next year. So
yeah,
who knows, like if, in October, they're gonna say, okay, you've had it for a year, we're gonna bump your increase up, for the remaining of the year.
yeah. So, I mean, there is a little pad in there. I mean, just one thing to be aware, and I've, been telling all the departments this, is that the money that's locked up as sort of, padding in your accounts is money that can't be used for salary increases. So, while I do think that a little bit of contingency is a good thing, so that we can move stuff around, just be aware, that when we're in the year where we're considering salary increases, those, increases are going to be based on our bottom line. And money that gets padded into any of these accounts is not available for that, salary adjustment.
Yeah, and we did talk about that. One of the issues is I do think our trial budget is way low, but we don't know what that is. And I'm not suggesting that we have essentially between 3 line items, about $18,000 for trials. We have a double homicide. We have a couple of really nasty domestic violence and sexual abuse cases that are going to go to trial. So I totally get that. I still think we might exceed our budget without the salary issue.
All right. So anyway, I mean, based on your historical spending plus the new Westlaw, I mean, that would be like 3,400. So there is about 600 padding in that line.
Okay.
Then travel, same budget. I mean, you average over the last 5 years, you've averaged 2,336 in travel. And so, I guess the question is, relative to the 5-year average, 2016 through 2020, what, how much travel do you expect to be doing? And this is for per diem, hotels, food, that kind of stuff.
I wouldn't think we'd exceed a 5-year average, even coming out of COVID. So that's a place we could potentially shave.
I mean, we could go to 2,500 and that would cover the average.
Yeah. I'm fine with that.
All right. Office supplies and expenses, your average is $57.89, so 6 covers that, although you've spent less than that considerably in the last couple of years. So for 2020, you did about 4,900. Year to date, you're at 3,200, so you may possibly even end up lower than 2020 this year.
Chris, I think some of that is because nobody was in the office working last year, and so our phone lines, we didn't have huge long distance calls for defendants and stuff like that.
Okay.
But if we get to fill our 2 positions in the near future, then I'm sure our phone lines are going to go back up a little crazy. So we'll have those bigger costs like we've had in 2019 and 18.
The other thing is, we just had the first jury trial since COVID started because they all got delayed. And now we have an insane fall of trials set up. We have even like 3 settings a day on certain days for jury trials. So I think we need to keep that number where it is because we're even this year, we're seeing, impacts of COVID and we're just coming out of that in the court system.
Okay. And let's see, equipment maintenance, 1,500. The average is 1,052. Let's see if...
I defer to Matt on that one in terms of more people, more complexity with our setup. I have no idea.
There'll be more printing with Colleen here for trial preparation.
Yeah, so in the past, it's a little variable. 2016 was almost 1,700, then it dropped way down for some reason in 2017 to 872, then back up to 1,508 in 2018. There's a lot of variation.
I think that's directly related to prosecution trial work, and I don't know. Seems like that's
1,500 is probably okay. Membership training, what do you guys code to this one? You're already over budget this year.
So we think what happened here is that the civil and criminal,
I coded a training that should have gone to criminal training. That was $750. I coded it to the wrong line.
Oh, okay.
And so
Yeah.
that popped that one over.
Oh, I see, yeah.
But also next year, if we are full staffed, we'll have a couple more people that we'll have to do training with as well. For those, the spring prosecutor conference, so that'll go up closer to 1,000 for one conference for the office.
Okay.
I don't even know what we've built in civil training. I mean, what is that? Or should that all be criminal?
Chrissy did the civil land
Oh,
use
that's
one.
right. Yeah.
We have our. And Chris, where's the best place to code the Utah Association of Counties invoices, the yearly billing for that, like the $100 or whatever? Is that for subscriptions, or I think I've put it in civil subscriptions in the past?
Oh, I guess, whatever. I mean, you've got a whole bunch of subscriptions accounts, probably more than you need. I mean, they could all be consolidated, really. All the auditors care is that, all the subscriptions go into a line that says subscriptions. So, I mean, we have these accounts, but I mean, in reality, we don't need 4 different subscription accounts. We could have just consolidated them all into one, but doesn't really matter. The historical spending on them is a lot lower than the budget. And so, that's part of the issue, I think, with having multiple accounts is that you put a little contingency in each one, and then you end up with 4 times as much contingency as you need.
Totally. Well, on the civil, so, okay, we're billing UAC membership into that. So that is a thing that we need to keep there. It looks like there's some UPC training from April that we paid out of that. I don't actually know if that was civil.
That was the one I coded to the wrong line.
Okay. I mean, historically, I tend to not have to pay because I tend to be a presenter. And I have a bad attitude about trainings. I don't like to go to them. And I'm not required to go to them like our criminal team. I think maybe too, the civil training line was bumped because we thought we were going to have a civil deputy, and I've been unsuccessful at that effort. So, I don't mind shaving some out of the civil training is where I'm going. But between UAC and, Chrissy will need to do some training and stuff. I mean, 1,000 seems appropriate still, but.
Maybe, a little more than that. I would say because there's 750 that's going to end up in this, we could recode it down where it's supposed to go.
Right, so the 1,900 includes 750 that was miscoded.
Well, not 750 yet, but it will be by the end of the year. So it's probably closer. I mean, in 2020, I don't know if you coded. You didn't code it to that. I can see the 750 in 2020. So you got up to 1125 in 2020.
But no, the 1941 for 2021 includes miscoded criminal training and civil.
I get that. I was just looking at the past before it started happening, just to get a baseline for it. I don't know. I mean, let's see. I might be able to look at the prior year.
So for the paralegals, it's 100 and I don't know if it's 125 or 150 for us to attend the trainings. And the attorneys are a little bit more like 175.
Okay, so I do see that you've got some prosecution UPC stuff in it last year also. So it's all mixed around right now.
Yeah.
And it was last year as well.
I don't know why we even need 2 line items, why we split it out, but if that's best practice, that's fine.
It's just.
Well, it's not really, but let's see, just trying to. 750, so. I would say, you know, just set it at least where you were in 2020 between the two. So maybe 1,200 on this one and 750 on the other. Unless, but you're also, you know, bumping this budget is, this memberships training for criminal is pretty reliably at 750. Although in 2020 there was UPC charges to both this criminal training account and the civil training account, both. But the combined amount in these two, you know, 1125 plus 750 is what you spent in 2020.
That's based on 5, 6 staff people, and we're adding 1. So we should at least increase it by, what is that? Whatever, 1/6 of 2,000 is. What is that math?
So let's see.
And not increase, but preserve.
Well, how about if we knock 1,000 off this one and leave the other one at 1,600?
That's good. I was thinking 2,500, so that works for me.
Okay.
So which lines did you change, Chris?
I took the criminal one down by 1,000.
To 1,000.
But, you know, maybe we should just, you know, after this meeting, we can talk about if we want to just stop using all these membership accounts and just use one and move it all up into it.
Yeah, I think that
Just
would
to
be
make
good.
the coding easier, because it's not being coded really the way it's named, and there's no reason to have all these different accounts, in my opinion. It just makes life harder.
Yes, it does.
Agreed.
After this, you know, the bottom line will stay the same. I'll just take this money and move it up, and then we'll stop using those other ones.
Right.
All right, so then books.
Books, I still need to order books for this year, Chris.
Okay.
And I don't remember off the top of my head how much they are.
Well, probably about 755 because that's the average spend over 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, Chris, when you're consolidating those line items, I think it does need to have training though. So subscriptions, memberships, training, that's all going to be one line item.
Well,
Or training would be separate.
we should probably have training in training,
Okay.
and we could just rename this account down here to just be training. And it could be training for criminal or civil.
Okay, but that we use to actually train law enforcement officers. So that's
Well,
a
never-
different thing.
Good, you know, typically there would be, you know, like a schooling or training line item for staff.
Mhm.
And I don't really see one. So, you know, maybe, Terry, you could break out how much of this money is training versus memberships and subscriptions.
Yeah.
And then we can create a new account for staff training.
Right.
And so, like, for instance, in the travel line item, I usually reserve that for per diem. And then, like, any type of admission costs for any conference or whatever, I would put into the training line item. And so this would be like for hotels and any kind of per diem. And then the cost to actually enroll in anything, tuition or registration fees, whatever, would go into a training line item.
Well, and that brings us to 3 more line items that are really all the same, in my opinion, which is major crimes, witness fees, and the professional and technical service. These are all trial-based line items.
Mm-hmm.
Professional and technical services we mostly use for translation services, transcripts, that kind of stuff. The witness fees are for witness expenses are, fees, travel, hotels, all that. And then major crimes is like all the other costs for a trial or general prosecution. Sometimes that could be a polygraph. That would be overages for these other line items. To me, they're all, I don't know. I don't see the advantage to separating them. Terry, do you have an advantage to them? I mean, I would probably combine those three into one and just call it major crimes. And it would do all that stuff.
Yeah, or maybe just trial expenses.
Well, it's
something
more
like-
than that.
Oh, okay.
So it would be, so for example, one of these really nasty domestic violence cases we have where the woman was really dramatically beat up, has brain injury she'll deal with her whole life and all sorts of physical stuff. We have to bring down numerous physicians and experts who we have to pay their hourly rate in addition to the travel costs, in addition to their hotel costs, in addition to the lame little witness fee you have to pay by statute. So that's part of what the witness expenses would be, but then say we need a translator. I mean, our Walnut Lane homicide, we paid a lot of money in translation because we had to have the translator at numerous points in the prosecution prep process and witness prep process, but then we needed 3 translators the entire trial every single day at all times because they rotated.
The court pays for the trial translators, but we use them to transcribe the jail phone calls and interviews that were conducted.
All right.
So we could leave it how it is, but just so you guys know, it's really those 3, and we only have 18,500 between the 3 line items for prosecuting major crimes. So far, we've gotten away with it. I just don't know. We've had basically a 2-year backlog on anything that would go to any felonies going to trial. So this fall will be interesting to see what we have to spend. And then obviously we have the double homicide, and that budget's going to get blown out of the water if we're able to prosecute that next year, but we don't know yet what that looks like.
Well, I mean, it's a wildly variable line item for all of them.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's already a lot of contingency built into it because you can see the averages spent over the last 5 years are a lot less than the budget. And that's just because we don't know what's coming.
Right.
Or sometimes we do, but a lot of times it's difficult to say. And so there's already quite a bit of contingency built into.
Yeah, I don't want to increase it because we don't know, but I definitely want to keep those where they are.
Many years ago, we did exceed all of our line items for the trial, because we had multiple homicides that we had to prosecute and they all went to trial.
Yeah, but on average, it hasn't gone over or even come close on average. But anyway, so that's I guess just a big contingency component. So anyway, but they're the same as historical budget amounts, even though we know that.
Keep them the same.
Okay, then cell phones. So let's see how.
That number is accurate. We connected with Renee. That's assuming we're fully staffed.
All right. And then a little bit for fuel. Special department supplies. What do you code to that one?
Office staff lunches and meetings that Christina attends, things.
All right. Well, it's below the average, but it's probably quite variable.
That one too, let's say we have a big trial and we have a bunch of law enforcement and stuff that are hanging out waiting during a lunch break or during while the jury's deliberating. We use that money to just have snacks around and stuff to keep law enforcement happy.
Keep us happy.
Keep us happy too, but man, those law enforcement officers, you gotta have food at all times.
All right. Yeah, on witness expense, I mean, the highest year in the last 5 years was about 3,900.
How was that Walnut Lane homicide? We
So,
had,
yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, we've got 5,000 in the budget, but, I mean, do you anticipate that it could be even more, something more expensive than that year?
Well, I mean, the double homicide, we'd have to bring down everyone from the state crime lab that's touched any evidence, and there is a ton of evidence that's being analyzed right now. We'd have to bring down the medical examiner. There's lots of people. So I would assume only in the context of the double homicide, but hopefully we are prosecuting that next year.
But
Yeah.
for physicians that we have to have come over from Colorado and stuff, they are very expensive. We have to pay those.
Right, we do
All right.
have this one domestic violence case that we're a little concerned. We don't know the physicians hourly yet, and they are obviously going to charge us for every hour they're working on it. So we are a little scared of that one, and that is going to trial this fall. So, but that'll be this year's budget anyway.
We think.
We think, unless it gets continued, but Don T doesn't like to continue things, so.
All right, so let's go to inventory then. Got 7,500. Do you know what sums that up?
So I checked in with Matt. We have 3 of our computers are
More than 5 years
2013
old.
and a 2014-year-old computer. Matt wants, his schedule is new desktop computers every 5 years. And
So we have 3 that exceed that policy. We're,
so that was,
one of the 3 computers is, you know, more problematic than the other 2. So we wouldn't
Okay.
necessarily, but probably. And then the estimate, we're on Max, of course, and the reason for that is the integration with the criminal team, and the mobile devices are amazing in court. And those are about 2,000. Matt's estimate was 2,000 per computer, and that's 3 computers. PCs would still be around, he said 1,000 to 1,500, so not a huge savings if it's closer to 1,500.
right.
We also have some things like Colleen would like a stand-up desk. We have these stand-up adjustments that go on the desktop, but they're pretty awkward to work with. So that's something we might be able to get done this year. We need to, you know, we're trying to hire this new prosecutorial assistant position. And so we actually need to just buy a whole new setup this year. So I don't think we'll have the budget for the stand-up desk in this year.
Including a desk and a computer and a chair.
Right, for the new position. So all of that, we feel like that number is the right number.
All right. Law enforcement training.
Bump that a little bit. So then subscriptions are only 2 line items we bumped. You know, you guys are seeing how much our law enforcement still needs support and help. Colleen has, I mean, Matt spent a lot of time with law enforcement too, but Colleen has a pretty impressive background of teaching law enforcement. So we are hoping to do even more of those trainings locally with Colleen. We just did one yesterday on search warrants and
Report writing.
So we increased that one a little bit. Sometimes we actually do hire trainers, but most of that is, you know, food and coffee and stuff like that. Copies and whatever we need for the training.
Okay, and then deputy legal. So this has gone down a lot because we moved it in-house, a lot of it. So, I mean, you can see that the salary line items have gone up a lot, but the deputy legal's gone down a lot from the average, and that's because we're past the adjustments to staffing. So 20,000 to cover that, I think, you know. So we spent 14,146 in 2020, about 11,100 this year so far. So
Yeah, I'd like to keep it there. We did, insurance paid one bill, 16,000 on the arm thing. So we would have exceeded it if we paid that. So I feel good about the number, but I don't want to see it go down either.
okay. So then, you know, not including any salary and benefits, the budget has gone up a bit from about our Projection for 2021 is 874, and it's gone up to 893, 737, so a little increase. Anybody, do you guys have, Christina and Terry, do you have anything to add before we close out your?
Well, one more thing is the victim advocate that we share with the sheriff's office, CJC, and the city. And I recall we put that number somewhere else. I just want to make sure it's somewhere.
I think I already have it somewhere.
And it was 4940 this year.
Hey, Chris, we put it in 104830-920-11.
Okay.
Right here, so.
So I don't think that's our line item, but I don't know who that belongs to.
It seemed to me like weren't there two that we were paying for somehow?
Well, we're paying 3 agencies, CJC, the sheriff, and the county attorney's office, which are all county agencies are paying. So that 15,000 will cover, that's 4940 per agency or per department. So that would cover it. And then the city puts in that same match plus a car, the office space, benefits. So they're paying more than we are even for that.
Does our year go up? Does our fee go up this year?
The MOU is not specific and it's grant dependent. So I don't know what year 3, 2022 will be year 3. And I don't know what the cost is going to be.
Well, can you guys figure that out for this year and next year so I can, I've got
This
15,
year
right.
This year it's 4940 times 3 for the county. So let's figure out what that is. And then we can connect and see if Karen knows. For
We
next
may
year.
have,
14,820 for this year. I don't know why it's showing 0. I thought we already paid that. So maybe we flagged it somewhere wrong.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. This is where Chris had me put it in that line.
I know, but it's not showing up there.
yeah, there's nothing that's been cut to it yet, unless it just barely sent it over to AP.
Well, that's 2020. So maybe we haven't gotten the bill. And actually, it looks like we got the bill. We paid it end of October of last year. So I guess we haven't paid it. So I'll connect with
Yeah, we can figure it out later. Just make a note to get back with me on that.
Okay. And then what's interesting is 2020, then that's only showing 2 agencies. So maybe the CJC is paying theirs differently because they're grant funded or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Okay. We'll get you that.
Okay. Anything else
That's it from
that
us.
you want to bring up on this
No.
operation budget? Okay. Does any budget advisory board members have any comments or questions? Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Chris, Terry.
Yep. Thank
Thank
you
you.
guys. Bye.
Okay, let's see. Just make mention that Mary McGann's joined us, Renee Baker has joined us, Angela Book has joined us. And next up, we've got our Fund 47, which is Recreation, Parks, Trails, Rec, we call it in the accounting system. This covers Grand County active transportation and trails, paved trail maintenance, and then some other costs. I'm going to start off reviewing the revenue side, and let's see. Maddie, correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, because I plugged this in this morning.
Okay.
So based on the number of hours that you called out, for trail ambassadors, I kind of estimated about 80,000 for that program. And so anyway, we can, talk about that, but this is a transfer from TRT, which we'll get to at the end of this meeting when we go over the economic development budget with August. So this is coming out of the slice of the TRT for establishing and promoting recreation. And so that's a transfer from there to cover that. And the expense side will probably predominantly going to be in salaries, wages. For TRCC, looks like OSTA the Old Spanish Trail Arena and the Grand Center are gonna eat up all the TRCC that we have. So there wasn't anything to transfer for 2022 there. Bringing in the optional transportation sales tax that was left over from Fund 21, so that's $538,296. So that's going to cover the any operational shortfall in this fund, plus a $100,000 contribution to paved path maintenance, and then anything that would be left over would be, if there is anything, would go towards grant match for, active transportation projects. Then I believe we can get up to $25,000 from Forest Service grant, $15,000 from BLM.
Chris, I actually do have one correction.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just finished my Forest Service numbers this morning. So we have a little bit left over in our agreement from this year that Brian said can roll over. So the total that we could spend is $28,400 for next year.
All right. Okay, BLM still good at 15?
Yep.
Okay, and then the state grants. I think this year 40,000 RTP. Is that still accurate, Maddie?
So for next year, it's 11,235.
Okay. Change that. Then the hotspot funding for the Spanish Valley Drive Trail. And then I got a grant from UARG for the Colorado River Pathway, assuming that, we can find a lot more money in addition to this. So this is just kind of a start on my trying to find money for that. And there are other options through the state and elsewhere that we can track down. But if we do figure out, how to spend that money, that's bringing that money in. And so all these combined would be the grants coming via the state. And then, let's see, donations. This is usually from, mostly from map sales that Moab Trails Alliance sells and then provides the proceeds for single track maintenance and construction. And then I think, we probably need to drop out of the city's ILA. I think we closed out the Bike Skills Park project, which was a big pain in the butt. And now that the city has their own Parks Trails rec director, we kind of feel like we'll let the city take the heat next time for any project that they do. I don't know. We can talk about it more. I mean, we haven't really formally dropped out, but the city did agree to pay us $30,000 a year for some work in the city. But that's been problematic. Anyway, at this point in time, we're not planning on getting any revenue from the city. But something the commission will have to probably discuss, and Maddie and myself also, about whether or not we want to carry on doing trail work in the city. I would say probably not myself.
So, Chris, does this budget excludes the sort of stay on the trail messaging stuff?
Yeah, I left that one up in the economic development budget.
Okay.
Just because Maddie, is out in the field a lot, and so I think she can manage trail ambassadors, but having Maddie manage the other component is probably not going to work. But some of August's staff could work with the committee on those things, and so that budget will be at the end of our meeting. And then the contribution side, this is bringing money in from the fund balance. So this is what I project at this point anyway to be the $420,000 would be left over in the paved path maintenance fund that will bring back into the budget. And then previously, the county council a few years ago had allocated $200,000 for some design work and other types of work for the Spanish Valley Drive Trail, and so that money got transferred into this fund, and this 187,510 is what's left of it. So I'm bringing that money back into the budget out of the fund balance. And so that's all the revenue.
Chris, I do have one question about the responsible recreation expenditures. So we have some of that, and maybe we should just talk more about it, but with that subcommittee, you know, we had, both Andrew and I had budgets that were proposed for things like trailhead signage projects and things, you know, things to do with education and outreach. And so is that something, do you think the process will change next year? Like, is it still going to be a subcommittee? Or I'm just trying to plan, you know, if I can't expect to get kiosks next year through that funding, then I'll need to readjust mine for this, you know, my proposal.
Well, let's just bounce over there right now, because if we bring on the film commission, it's going to cut into that budget. And
Okay.
So I'll just show you what August and I kind of worked up. You know, and we can get to this and maybe juggle it around some, but the responsible recreation program, right now we've got $126,835. I don't really know. It's an informal committee. You know, I wanted to task some county employees to sort of help administer it and follow through on a lot of things. But that's a budget that we're looking at right now. And I don't know how that ties in with what you guys were thinking.
Maybe I can send you, looking for that form right now. Maybe I can send you the proposed budget we have.
Okay.
For all types of different possible expenses.
Yeah. And I mean, this is all still subject to change too. And so how this money gets spent, you know, probably some of it, you know, will be a decision point for the commission to make in November. But this is just where it's at right now.
Okay.
It's still a fairly substantive budget, you know, and this 80,000 is where the expense side of that revenue into Fund 47 is. So it's coming out of here and going into 47, and that's the Trail Ambassador budget, which is going up from 15,000 to 80. And I do think I think Trail Ambassador is going to be very effective, and so I tend to agree with bumping the budget up pretty substantially.
Okay.
But of course, you know, it's coming sort of out of what would go to this budget too, this responsible recreation budget. So.
Okay.
But,
yeah, maybe we can touch base after, just because things like signage, I mean, I could see them potentially being able to be funded through that budget, but I didn't include them on my budget for that reason.
Yeah, and so I just left it up here. And certainly you can be involved as well in designing and helping out with that, but I think we'll just expense it out of Fund 20, well, whatever fund we end up with, but out of this budget. And, you know, at this point, we're just, giving a budget to broader categories. We don't have to detail out every single expenditure yet.
Okay.
But we can establish, you know, a budget for the total program and then later figure out how to spend that money. So it's not necessary at this point to know every single little thing about it.
Okay.
We just know what the ceiling is.
Yeah. I do have, so yeah, I didn't include this in my budget, but I do have spreadsheets that do kind of detail everything pretty in detail. So I'll send that over to you, and maybe we can just make sure it's in the ballpark.
Okay. All right, let's see. Go back to 47, the expense side. And I'll cover some of the things that are not really associated necessarily with Grand County Active Transportation and Trails. So this paved path maintenance line, this 520 is basically the opening balance as I project it in 2022 plus another 100,000 addition. So every year we add 100,000. And then I just basically budget to spend it all, and, we don't ever spend it all, but, it's, just authorizing those expenditures. We are gonna actually spend a pretty good chunk of it, though, next year, because we're gonna seal coat the Moab Canyon Trail. And that's gonna be probably 150,000. But, whatever we don't spend, I just, it's not, budgeting to spend it all is okay, as long as, we spend it on paved path maintenance. And it also, a lot of the expenditures, like this 18,047, pretty substantive chunk of that is maintenance, just regular maintenance on the transit hub, the bathroom, et cetera. Then let's see, moving down. The administrative services are just this fund's compensation for the general fund providing payroll, accounting, et cetera. And then the Colorado River Pathway, this 300,000 includes the 150,000 we'd get from Utah Office of Outdoor Recreation, plus our match, and that sums to 300,000. If we get other money, we would have to amend the budget to actually increase this to the total project cost. Which if we do get funding for that pathway, it's going to be a $7 to $8 million project. But we haven't secured anything yet. So this is just what we've secured in grant funding plus our match. Spanish Valley Drive, so this would be the hotspot funding plus the remainder of that 200,000 that hasn't been spent that was allocated. And then this right here is sort of the money that was left over, although this is going to change since we adjusted the RTP grant. But, this will need to, some portion of this money that's revenue over expense is going to go up into the salary line item to cover the trail ambassadors plus any salary adjustments for existing staff. So that's that part. And then the rest of these line items are GCAT line items. So you want to go over some of this stuff, Maddie? By requesting a bit more for travel. Let's see. Maybe I can pull up Maddie did send in a narrative. I don't know. Maybe you just read off of that, Maddie, and we can go.
Sure, yeah. Well, one thing to know is that there are a few trail conferences in Utah and national, but they've been canceled for the last 2 years. Or they were canceled in 2020, and then some were canceled this year, or they were virtual, so they weren't, didn't require travel fees. And so the ones we're looking at for next year are the Utah Office of Outdoor Rec Summit, which is in Utah, the Utah Bike Summit, which was one of the ones that was canceled, and then the Professional Trail Builders Conference, which is in Arkansas. But it's really the only conference that specializes in kind of exactly what we do. So I'd like to try and go to that one. And it's also been canceled the last 2 years. And then I also have a line here for mileage reimbursement for GCAT staff if we end up with needing 3 vehicles out in the field, which occasionally happens.
Okay, and then office supplies, 800, which looks, a little less than what you've spent in the last couple of years, although you're way down in 2021 year to date.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure why that number is so low. So I wanted to look into it a little bit, but I think we'll probably need a little less than previous years because we purchased a lot of our office equipment and all the stuff we needed for office setup.
Okay. And then equipment, supplies, and maintenance, 2,400. What's that one about?
So that one is for what Cody recommended for vehicle maintenance, which is $1,500. And then also we have our staff use their own bikes to access sites. And so I would need to write a policy still, but having, employees who use their bikes for X number of hours or X number of days, be able to get like a free tune-up every season, or have a little, if they damage something on their bike at work, so it's not falling all onto them, since that stuff's pretty expensive.
Yeah. Then fuel, so this is just, fuel expenses.
So I looked
And-
at fuel from 2019, just because in 2020 it was, things were just kind of unusual and people were driving their own vehicles.
Yeah, and it's gonna go up 15%. Let me just see what that looks like relative to 2019. So if we added 15% to 2019, it's gonna be 1330.
Okay.
So maybe just bump it a little bit to cover that increase in cost of fuel.
Great.
Next up, cell phones. So I assume this is just based on who has cell phones right now?
Just me and Tyson.
And so that's, let's see, that's 2 data plans. And I added a little bit for insurance because you're getting a little bit of the split out on the new building there.
Okay.
I just put down what we paid in 2021. Okay, then pretty substantive increased request in miscellaneous supplies. What's that?
So miscellaneous supplies, or I guess the way I usually cover the operational costs, it's a mix of miscellaneous supplies, inventory, and then our reimbursable expenses. And so one of our grants this year is for a more, I try and get them to cover at least a little bit of our maintenance. But one of them for this year is really just covering a specific project that's labor and materials for cattle guard replacement, essentially. So trying to offset that a little bit with operations in the miscellaneous fund, since it's not being paid through a grant.
So I guess I'm still not quite clear. So what is the 7,400? How does that, what components sum to 7,400?
So that will be for hardware, lumber, miscellaneous supplies like volunteer gloves, paint. Painting, we have to do pretty much every other year. And so this year we didn't do much painting, but next year we'll have to buy a lot of gallons of paint to do the trail delineation. And so I have, let's see, I have it broken down here. So looking at the accommodations for those things in years past, it's been about 8,700. And then we also have the reimbursable expenses in account. This reimbursable expenses count number 2, which is 2,000. So it's coming in about 1,000 above what we've done in the past, which we might not spend it all, but it's nice to budget for it in case something comes up.
Okay, but you're not including any type of labor costs in this, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Right, so so reimbursable expense 1, which one is, which project is that associated with? And what's
So
it for?
that's for Recreational Trails Program Grant 2021 through 2023. And in the grant, so we'll get reimbursed, and in the grant, it's 8,600, I believe, for cattle guards. And then I added a 15% for contingencies for the budget, just in case the cost of steel keeps going up. I hope that it will be less than that, but I just don't want to be stuck under budget for that category.
So did we include, you say it's reimbursable, did we include the reimbursement revenue in our revenue side?
We won't get it until 2023.
Okay, so you gotta build the expenses up and for a couple of years before you can get reimbursed?
Yeah.
All right, so, and yeah, so you'll be tracking all those expenses, right? Because they won't really roll over very well in this accounting software.
Yeah, I have a separate spreadsheet.
All right, so I guess we just have to realize this is an expense that will be reimbursed not in this year, but, or not next year, but the year after.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. And then, so this, which project was reimbursable expense to?
So that is the RTP grant 2000 to 2022. So this we will get reimbursed for next year, and we'll get reimbursed for materials and labor. So this is covering 1,000 that we still have left over for materials for the grant. And then I also put another $1,000 in there for if we, because I'll be closing out that grant next year and applying for a new one. So that gives me a little bit of money in the budget if I can, because I can usually start spending in September or October if all the paperwork goes quickly. So that gives me a little bit to start spending on that grant right away so that we can start those projects if we are able to in the field.
Okay. And then number 3.
So that one is the Forest Service, I believe. And so we can bump that actually up to, what was that new number I gave you, 28,000, let me check here.
So
28,400.
what is this expense though?
So that will be probably labor primarily.
So that will already be included in the salaries.
Okay,
Anything labor is already going to be included in salaries. We don't want to duplicate it.
okay. I have a request for total number of hours that I've sent to you, and I guess I haven't sent it to Renee yet, but in that I don't have hours for Forest Service project specific employees. Because
Yeah.
this year we did it this way, but I can change it.
Yeah, so I mean, unless there's actual tangible expense that's not labor, then we wouldn't put anything in for that.
Okay,
It would already be included in your salary line item.
okay,
So there's no like tangible purchase, it's just all in-kind labor match?
correct. Yeah,
All right, I'm gonna zero that one out. Okay, moving on to inventory, 8,600.
Yep.
What is
So-
that? What's that?
sorry, I'm just scrolling down here on my narrative. So, so some of those items honestly might also be able to be covered as responsible recreation because they have to do with education outreach. So I have 3,000 for signs in there. Signs that aren't associated with grant projects, as well as the license for our Adobe Suite software, since we use that to do all the signage design. And then also we have $2,600 for a walk behind rubber carrier, which is basically a little motorized wheelbarrow. And this is actually a pretty good price for it. The ones we were looking at previously were $9,000. And this one looks pretty much the same and has good reviews, but is a lot cheaper for some reason. And it's something we can't really rent as equipment. No one in town has it. And we will need it for our trail build project in the next fall.
Okay.
And then I have 500 in there for metal cargo ramps to load it into the truck. And then 1,000 recommended by Matt for possible PC replacements. And 340 for our spot devices, which are our emergency devices for when you have no cell phone service.
Okay.
Great.
I guess if you decide, if we can decide those signs are going to come out of the other budget, then let me know so we can adjust this.
Okay.
Okay, and then you want to go over training?
Yes. So some of that covers conference fees for the 3 conferences that I talked about earlier, the Utah Office of Outdoor Recreation Summit, Bike Utah Summit, and Professional Trail Builders Conference. And then also we had some plans to do professional development in years, last year that didn't come to fruition, but a welding certification for Tyson, since we do currently contract out a lot of our welding for kiosks and all kinds of on-trail structures, as well as an engineering and drafting course for Tyson, who uses some of that software right now, but hasn't ever gotten any formal training in it. And then for myself, I'm interested in taking some leadership and management courses, as well as potentially a class through USU on recreation and natural resource management and or visual communications.
Okay. So just to be sure there's nothing being doubled up between this and the travel line item?
Correct. Yeah, these are just the conference fees.
All right.
And some of those might go down, with early bird specials. It's just hard to know because they've been canceled for 2 years in a row. So it's hard to know if they're gonna, I expect they'll probably boost the fee a little bit.
Okay. And then contributions to other agencies. Luna is a nonprofit that does grooming up in the LaSalle's for the cross-country skiing. And we've historically made a $2,000 contribution to them, so that's in there. Let me just zero this out for now and recheck the bottom line real quick. $165.48. So that amount there, $165.48, is what we have to work with for adding the trail ambassadors into the salary, plus any other salary adjustments. And then what would be left over after all that, I would roll over into the fund balance and could be used for grant match money. Typically, if we get federal or state money, it's a 20% match. And so, for instance, if we're looking at an $8 million project like Colorado River Pathway, that's like $1.6 million match required. And so, obviously, a ways to go before we actually save up for that. But, rolling some of this money over for that purpose is good.
Chris,
All
I do
right.
have.
Go ahead, Maddie.
Yeah, just one more thing I thought of when I was watching Christina's budget thing. We're starting an Adopt a Trail program for next year, and then also we have a lot of volunteer events, and so I was wondering about having a budget for buying like food and things for all of our volunteer events and some volunteer appreciation.
Okay.
And honestly, probably some staff appreciation as well.
That's what your paycheck's for. Maybe. So, I think that we need to figure out how much salary adjustments and the Trail Ambassador program is going to impact this before we start adding much more. But typically, there would be some kind of supplies, like office supplies might be able to cover, or we could rename this just supplies, and it could cover, like catering type costs.
Okay.
But maybe we'll revisit that after we get through with the salary stuff, because I'm not really sure what we're looking at. And, like I say, it's also important to save up for grant matching. Otherwise, we'll never be able to complete any of these big active transportation projects because we'll never have a match for it.
Yeah.
All right, anybody have any comments or questions for myself or Maddie on this budget? Okay, thank you, Maddie.
Thanks.
Okay. I need to pull my agenda back up. So let's see, next up is Grand County Assessor. And let's see, is Debbie on the line? Yeah, I see her in there. Pull up that budget. Okay, let's see, so. Debbie, do you want to walk through any notable changes or anything to your budget from previous years?
I'm trying to get my screen back up. Hang on. Okay. Can you hear me, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. No, I don't have a lot of changes. Other than I reduced my reappraisal budget by $2,000 down to $25,000. And then on my, it looks like overtime, it looks like I'm over, Chris, but I called you and asked you to move money from reappraisal into that. So does that matter?
Yeah, we'll do that
Okay.
later when I do the 2021 end of year work.
Okay. I just noticed it showed that I was over, but
Yeah,
and I hope go ahead.
Okay. I mean, for subscriptions and memberships, you had one high year in 2020, but the average is considerably lower than that. Do you know why it was high in 2020 as compared with years past?
I don't right off the bat.
Because let's see, if we go, let's see, so, yeah, it's like around 2,300 between 2018 and 2019. Then it bumped way up for some reason in 2020 to 5,500. And now we've only spent 806 so far in 2021. So, I mean, I was thinking that it's more like a $2,500 budget unless there's something.
I'm not sure if something was maybe miscoded in 20.
Yeah, it might have been a miscode, I don't know. But if you can't think of anything that you added on in 2020.
I can't because that's just my IAO memberships and stuff like that. So no, I can't.
I think 2,500 would probably cover it because the highest you got to was 2391 in 2019, except for that 2021, which may be some kind of miscode.
Can we look at that? I'm not sure how to run this Cassell program to get into 2020.
Yeah, hang on one second. Let me, Cerrone computer operating was 3725. I don't know what that is, but that's in Cassell.
So that's my PAMS. Yeah.
What is it?
That's my PAMS, my appraisal program.
Okay, is that something that's going to be an ongoing?
Yes, for now it will be. I'm hoping to be done with it next year.
Like you have one more year to pay on it, or you're going to not pay on it?
Nope, we have one more year to pay on it, and then we'll be going on the new state program. We won't run our tax roll on the new state program this year because we haven't got our data into them yet or anything, so it's not even up.
All right, well, we better keep it then. Keep it at the higher level then. All right, public notices. Looks like sometimes you have them, sometimes you don't. What do you need to notice? Is it when you send out mailings? Is that what it is?
Yeah, when we mail them out to the reappraisal areas.
All right. And then, travel, 3,500, your average over 5 years is 2642.
Yeah, we didn't do much travel the last couple of years, but I will be going to UAC this year, and then Marcy and myself will be going to the Assessors Conference this year. They're going to go ahead and hold that in Ogden, so we didn't go in the past 2 years. We didn't take a lot of classes, so.
Let's see, so office supplies and expenses, it's a bit over average. In 2020, you spent about 3,500. In 2019, you spent 2,400.
Yeah, and we can probably cut that a little bit because we were having to have different color folders to keep track of the ones that are exempt from personal property, but we're not using those now. And so those were quite expensive and then we had to mail out a lot more flyers to them, more notices. So we can probably cut that to like 3,000.
Okay. All right, equipment maintenance, your average is 7,300, and in 2020 you spent 7,453, so I'd say 7,500 is probably good there.
Okay, except for we got notice from Coins that he will be raising that.
Oh, yeah.
Year, so it needs to go to 9,000.
All right.
Taking it from 575 to 750 per month.
Yeah, so I think that, didn't we calculate, Quinn, that it was a $2,100 increase for each department that uses it?
Yeah, I think we've calculated that for the last 3 meetings in a row, and nobody can remember exactly how much.
Yeah, I've got the notice in front of me. He says he's going to 750 a month.
All right, yeah.
9,000.
Okay, fuel.
I think you put 9,600. I think it's just 9,000.
Well, all right, but if you want, I mean, so 2020 you spent almost 7,500, and if we add 2,100 to that.
Oh, okay. I see what you did. Okay.
But yeah, and even if we went off the average, it would still be more than 9 with that $2,100 increase.
Okay.
You might get some increases on other things too. Fuel average is 248, so the request is about double the average.
Yeah, and we didn't do any traveling, and we will be traveling this year. So, and a lot of time last year, I took my own vehicle when I went out and did reappraisal.
Okay, professional and technical. What do you charge to this one?
That goes to the data center and to the Utah State Tax Commission.
Yeah. Those are audits, and we've cut our audits way back the last couple of years because they keep raising the exempt limit, and so we haven't done as many audits as we usually do in the past. And then the data center is the one that mails out our notices. So
Yeah, it's dropped down quite a bit since 2019 for some reason. I don't know why. Do you know what? So you're just saying it's because we haven't done the audits?
yeah, we haven't been doing as many audits.
Are you expected to be doing more?
I don't.
Huh?
I don't expect to be doing more of them. So we could probably cut that one.
Well, if we did 4,000, that would cover, what you did in 2019.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, cell phone allowance stays the same. Special department supplies, maybe a little bit of a contingency there over the average, but pretty close to 2020. Miscellaneous, the same thing. Dropped your reappraisal. So with the increase though, so you're, even with the increase in the BOE and everything, where, do we pay the BOE out of this line?
I don't think so. I think that comes out of assessing and collecting, doesn't it? That reappraisal is for him to do my new growth.
Yeah, where did we put the increase for Randy Kelly's fees though, Debbie? Do you remember? Or where is that supposed to go?
That usually comes out of assessing and collecting.
Well, what do you mean? You are the assessing department.
But in the past, the BOE never came out of my budget. It's always came out of a different fund.
Can you look up where we cutted that one, Quinn? Okay, and then schooling. So 3,100, which is the same budget. Average is 1,573 over 5 years.
Yeah, we'll be adding to that this year. We didn't, the last 2 years, we didn't do the assessor school or the UAC, so we'll be adding to that here shortly.
Okay.
So, and I will be asking for another person this year, just to let you guys know. I've been talking to Renee about it. So in some of that, we will need some schooling for that person if we get that position, as well as equipment for them.
Okay, you're gonna need to send all that to Mallory and I too. I don't know if, is Mallory on? Are you aware of that position request, Mallory?
I am not, but I'll make a note of it and add it in right now.
Okay.
Because yeah, we need all that info like ASAP. We're nearing the end of.
Had it taken care of, so.
All right. Well, I haven't heard anything from her about it. I'll just make a note. Which position?
I want to hire a new personal property motor vehicle person. Currently, we have 2 appraisers, and my appraisers are spending time at the counter not getting their appraisals done. So last year we were working around the clock trying to get them finished because Jill is trying to do motor vehicle. Motor vehicles became very needy. Even on the quick renewals, it's taken us more time to do them with the state, and everything's taken more time. So we're spending a lot more time at the counter. So I need to have Jill so that she can focus on helping Marcy with reappraisal.
Well, do we have to do that?
We have to do
Because
that.
we're losing our butts on it. If we add a whole nother position for it, we're really going to be in the deficit. Because we are only, let me see if I can find where we get what our revenue is, but it's only like maybe, it's less than 30 or 40,000, I think.
Yeah, I don't think they pay us for 2 people.
They don't even pay us for one. I mean, is it just are we just volunteering to do that?
Well, let me put it to you how he put it to me. If you take it out of your office, Debbie, you'll be doing a disservice to the community because we will not put another office in Utah, in Grand County. So, because
But they're not
COVID, I was ready for them to take it out of my office.
Yeah, so I mean, this right here, how much we get. So in 2019, we got 38,000. 2020, we got 25,000 almost. So yeah, we're heavily subsidizing the state on this.
Well, so that probably pays Jennifer's, but.
Well, not salary and benefits.
No, just the salary.
So
Hey, Chris,
anyway.
let me jump in. That comes out of 10415310. It's a non-department, professional and technical.
Okay. Anyway, all right. So I
got
guess we're
again, Quinn, 41.
10415310.
That's not right.
Okay.
So how much do you figure it's going to go up? Based on what Randy said.
Well, his current, he says his current is $60 and he's going to go to 75 per hour. And he said that he did a wage thing with somebody and that it was The average was, Quinn, do you have that letter?
Yeah, so he
What-
put in, for just his hourly, which doesn't
Right.
include his other stuff, but just his hourly, he's at 28 hours. So 28 times 75 plus a hair.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's the total bill?
The total bill for this year was 31.25, and that seems to be a little lower than it was last year. Is that right, Debbie?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit less.
All right. I'm just gonna add a little bit to cover that to this one. That's like $800 increase about.
I'll just throw something out there if there's a minute.
Okay.
Debbie and I have talked in the past about the possibility of my office taking over at least the billing and collecting of personal property taxes. And I was all ready to get started with that in 2020 before COVID. And so that's something we can look at. And I don't know how much that would alleviate the need for an extra person, or maybe they could be part-time or something. I'm not sure, but we have a little bit of extra time in our office at this point that we could use towards that. And then property taxpayers would be paying in the same office, at least for real and personal. So that's something to throw out there that we can talk more about.
Okay. I mean, it might be a little. I mean, it would create a situation though where somebody would have to make a double stop, wouldn't they, if they were paying on a vehicle? They usually pay when they register, don't they?
Yeah. Another problem with that is the personal property person has to get certified with the state. And so you have to carry a personal property designation. And so all of the people that are in our office are licensed to do that. So, and then with having the files in our office and then them coming to Chris's office to pay, you know, that may cause an issue because he would be running back and forth to grab files to see what's going on with them.
Anyway, I mean, you can explore it more. It just sounds like it might be a little awkward for people to have to register their car and then go to the treasurer and pay the personal property tax.
No, Chris, I'm talking about business personal property taxes.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not talking about taking over motor vehicle in my office.
Come on, I'll let you have it.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, that could cut down a little bit on the workload, probably.
Well, but
So, yeah.
as I was saying, they have to be certified to be able to you know, handle the personal property folders and stuff like that. So.
Right, and we can talk more about it, Debbie.
Okay.
I'm considering more of a situation like it is with real property, where the assessing stays with you. It's just the billing and collecting that we could potentially work on. But we'll talk about it later. We don't need to do it in this meeting.
All right. Okay, so yeah, Mallory, I think you already did make a note to touch base with Renee, because we're literally, like today, trying to wrap up our list of salary survey, which includes also proposed positions. So we need to make sure we get everything across the whole county on this list, and we're trying to get it done today.
All right, well, I apologize. I've been talking to Renee. I didn't know I was supposed to be talking with anybody else, so.
All right.
I've never asked for another position. I've been in here since 1999, and we've had the same amount of people in this office. With all the new growth and all the added parcels and added businesses, it's just getting to be too much for 4 people.
Yeah. All right. Don't I remember something that you sent out, Chris, about the possibility of potentially increasing the assessing and collecting property tax rate? I have a vague recollection of something about that.
Yeah, so I think we were under the impression that that was sort of capped out, or at least the state was telling us how much we could do on the rate for that. But it turns out, according to the tax commission, that we can increase that if we want to. We just go through truth and taxation like we would for the general fund rate.
All right, just something to keep in mind, I guess. Okay, anything else to add, Debbie?
Nope, I think that's it.
Anybody have any?
You need computers, Debbie.
Oh, yeah, I have that right here on my list too. Yeah, Matt, we will need 3 computers.
Desktops? So there's
Yeah.
that 3,000, Matt?
That's correct.
Okay. Anything
So,
else?
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
All right, Matt, you're up. Let's see. All right. Pull up the IT budget. My computer will cooperate.
You can just blame it on the IT guy.
Yeah, I know. It's like normally when you talk with the IT guy, everything all of a sudden works.
Right? It's magic.
All you got to do is just complain and everything starts working again.
Yep, that's how it works.
All right, just roll through your budget.
Rolling through, starting at the top here. I start at 230 at travel because I don't really have anything before that. Travel, would like to try to keep that at 2,000 next year. There's several conferences that I'd like to be able to attend, as well as with Frank, that have been canceled with COVID and otherwise over the last bit. I can't guarantee that they're going to run. Right now they're advertising that they are going to run, but I'd like to try to keep that there. The next one's 1,500 for office supplies. In my narrative that I have here, I'm a little confused on what I'm seeing in actuals and what is actually in the transaction browser. Like if I look at 2020 and it shows 1,548 in actuals. But then if I look in the transaction browser, it shows a total of $868. And looking a little closer at the transactions, it only looks like it shows about 9 to 10 months of billing for 2020.
So this, I mean, one thing that it's kind of a bug in the software or whatever, but it doesn't pick up any accrued expenses. So if we paid any bills that in early 2021 that got accrued to 2020, they don't show up.
I don't know. Yeah, it looks like it only kind of ran from like the beginning of 2020 into about September or October of 2020.
Yeah, Quinn could pull it up.
Like if you sort that by transaction date there, like just click on transaction at the top, the transaction date next to amount.
Transaction.
There you go. Yep. So you see how it kind of just stops there in September?
October. Period 10 is October.
Well, October, I'm sorry, but transactions 9/30 either way, but I don't know the difference of why it shows 868 here. And then, like I said, when you look at the data browser there,
yeah,
it shows
so the data
15.
browser usually pull across. I mean, there's some bug in the transaction browser. Definitely best to work off of a detail ledger that Quinn can get.
So either way, just looking at that, if I go off of the actuals in this that we're looking at here, it shows the 1,548, which seems a little high to me. I would anticipate typically this being around $1,000 normally. But I threw in 1,500 for next year just to compensate for whatever this discrepancy is. Partly because I do have now a new staff member here. I've got my IT support tech, and I've got Frank over here too. And we don't spend a whole lot on office supplies. A lot of that is just cost of phone, and then have a hotspot that goes into that. But with having more people, and anticipate I'll probably use a little bit more in office supplies. So that's why I put 15. But if you wanted to push that back down to 1,000 and then it runneth over, I don't know.
Try the account inquiry on that, Quinn, while we're moving on. We'll just come back to it. Maybe Quinn can spot something.
I've got transactions all the way through the whole year in that. I mean, in Cassell, there's stuff in 9, 10, 11, 12, and even 1 that got accrued back. So, and
So-
1547 is the amount. 1547.78. So Advantage is rounding it up to 1548.
So then if that is indeed the case, then I would ask to keep that at 1,500 for next year.
But is there anything that stands out as an unusual expense, or are they all just recurring monthly fees?
They're all typical recurring fees. And sorry, go ahead, Quinn.
Now there's one Verizon that seems high for 400, but other than that, they're all, yeah, I mean, generally in line, 12, 40, 42.
Yeah, it's usually my phones, and then yeah.
Okay.
So again, if that actual is the actual number, then I would say let's try to keep that at 1,500, and I'll try to stay frugal about it like I do.
Yeah, that jives with what's in Cassell.
Okay. 250 equipment maintenance. Next year, I'm going to be having to replace some large battery backups in some of my racks here. I've got a couple of different tools and cables that need to be purchased. Normally that 200 typically should cover that, but I bumped it up next year because those batteries are big and they're going to be a little expensive. 270. This one reflects the cost of the internet that's fed here to the courthouse. In 2020, I did work with Emory, and that dropped, and you'll see that drop there from 10,159 down to about 3,500 bucks. That's because they reached out to me and very plainly said that we are the largest user of their internet service here in the Valley, which isn't terribly surprising. And they offered to move me to a best effort service, which potentially could give me faster speeds. And it's cheaper. And so it's kind of a bit of a no-brainer. I said, yeah, let's go ahead and try it. I can't say I've been seeing those faster speeds. And the other service that we pay for is it's a guaranteed service, like it's a synchronous type of a service that I can push a quality of service across. One of the projects that I'd like to be able to do here is to move our phone service into a voice over IP type of setup. Fortunately, I haven't been able to test that because that is reliant on some of that network upgrade that we talked about briefly with the attorney earlier. I'd like to keep it where it's at the 1080, just in case I do have to turn that service back up to a guaranteed service versus a best effort. But if you feel it prudent to turn it down, then I'll go with whatever you want.
Well,
go ahead.
Have to make cuts, then I usually put a little star on the things that
possible. Yeah.
That we might look into if we have to make cuts. So that's there.
The fuel, that's 290, right? The $200 that I have in there, that reflects a pre-COVID travel figure. Now that I do have more staff with the GIS and my IT tech here, it's possible that we'll see more usage with that, particularly if we do also travel to some of these conferences and such too. So I'd like to keep that at 200 if we could. The 310 professional services, I'd appreciate if we can circle back to that one because there's a few pieces in that. I don't want to get too out in the weeds on that. So skipping down to the next one, we go to 320-100, which is GIS licensing. That's going to stay at 25 grand. It's an enterprise license agreement that we've stepped into with Esri. It's an ongoing thing. It pays for all the maintenance for all the servers and any installation of software that we have here. The next one is 320,200. I reduced that to $200. What that is, in essence, is any tools that Frank needs. Initially, it was to purchase a computer, some GPS equipment, a couple other things. The 200's left in there just as a contingency, just in case his graphics card kicks the bucket or does something stupid. The cell phone allowance, the 2160 reflects I believe,
Like 2 data plans.
Yeah, it would be data plans for myself, and so basically that's $90 or 180 times 12.
1080. If you want that, it's not in here.
I thought I put that in. I think my question was on it is that the 2160 that's allotted, that's the maximum. And I know that the policy dictates department heads versus staff and data plans and otherwise.
But it doesn't really. I mean, it basically says that, you know, if you're requiring your employee to use a phone, just voice phone only, then it's 60. But if your employee needs data, then it's 90. And so it's based on need.
Okay. So
if you're expecting yourself and your employee to be using your phones, to access data, email, et cetera.
And I absolutely do. Yeah. So if you can keep that at 2160, that would be preferred. I'm sorry, I thought I had that one in there. Special department supplies, 400. This is what I call consumables. These typically are going to be like cable adapters, jacks, ends, miscellaneous connectors and such. $100 typically should do it. Inventory, I don't have any anticipated purchases for next year. I've got PCs, everything up to date that I need in order to run. I did have a question on this one. Right now it shows a charge of $27.96 from this year. Looking at the data browser, that was a subscription for our current network solution that's in place. It's an ongoing thing. It should have been coded to the 2020 budget. It came in January. I forget. Seems like it got invoiced late or something. But anyways, either way, it's on this year's, even though I didn't have a budget in place for it. I'm not sure what you want to do with that.
Where would it normally go?
Like I said, it's an ongoing subscription thing for antivirus support updates and otherwise. I'd be fine with it going anywhere, but in the past it had gone into that 800 account, but I typically do it when I buy a bunch of equipment too. So
well, we'll just have to amend the budget for 2021 then for that line item. I mean, unless you want to move it to a different one.
I don't really have anywhere else to move it to.
I guess if it's a subscription, it could go in subscriptions, but.
Yeah, like I said, it typically comes when I buy a bunch of equipment and I'm having to.
All right.
So, yeah, I guess amend it for now if we can't find somewhere else to stick it in. Schooling expense, these would normally be trainings, UAC, that kind of stuff. I was planning on going to some conferences, taking Frank to some stuff this year too. Those all got canceled. I'm planning on going to UAC this year, so that's why the projection's down to 450, but I still would like to be able to attend some of that stuff next year. And so that's why I left it at 5,000.
All right, but, I mean, that's quite a bit of money.
It is, but it's me and another staff member. Some of these user conference fees can be, you know, $1,200-1,500 by themselves. Those would be conferences for some of the legacy systems that we got here, like Spillman, Esri, and then some other miscellaneous continuing education and such too. So yeah, I think it would approach that, but I don't think it would exceed it.
Okay.
And then, so to circle back into the professional services, the 310 triple out there. This one, there is an attachment that's in your Advantage software if you want to pull it up. So I'm looking at the same thing here. And this line item takes care of mostly ongoing support for our systems. I believe that you know, any system that we have here, we need to make sure that we're up to date on support and ongoing registration, because when you do run into a problem, a lot of times you need the support then, and if you haven't been paying for it, they make you pay for it plus interest. So unfortunately, this is just the cost of doing business. The first section in here is know before. That one I paid out this year at $4,800, and that's for a 3-year subscription. So next year we won't see that. That's ongoing social engineering training, social security awareness training. Next one is Godaddy, and that's very specifically for registration of our Grand County, Utah website, domain names. VMware runs these the underlying systems that host our on-premise servers here. Civic Plus is the ongoing hosting of our website. They increase, as most of these do, year over year. Civic Plus, as well as a bunch of these, they're 5% year over year. So this year it was just shy of that 5,800. Next year I'd anticipate it to be the 6,100. Email filtering, here at the county, use a couple of different email filters. This one is through Barracuda. It does a first line email filtering. It also does encryption service and whatnot. And it ultimately supplies a bit of redundancy to our email system. If in case that part goes offline, then this will catch all that email and deliver it. Again, it increases year over year. Phone support. I use a company out of Grand Junction called Phones Plus. They are our dealer for all of our Avaya phones here. We pay an ongoing support to them, and then there's a contingency built into that number as well, in case one of the main pieces within the PBX fails. This year we spent about $1,000 in that between ongoing support and licenses and system replacements. I like to keep that at 2,000 just because if something does fail, I don't want to be behind the buck on it. Recycling fees I haven't really used in the last few years because we haven't had the staff power to get through the big pile that's out there in the bus barn, and that's been accumulated in my office and other places. But I do have that now, and he's been working diligently to reduce that size. And that's for ethical recycling of e-waste. We dismantle everything, and I try to get any of the circuit boards and things that contain precious metals, heavy metals, that kind of stuff off to e-waste. You know, we recycle everything else, metal, like bare metal, with the transfer station here. I've got a whole setup if you're ever interested in it. But That I anticipate will go down next year to 1,000. I think I'll probably spend all 1,500 of it this year. The next one's social media archiving. I use a company called Page Freezer for that. Here at the county, we have about 15 different social media accounts, if you believe it or not, ranging from anywhere from community economic development to Old Spanish Trail Arena, and also including our YouTube broadcast page. This was considered a best practice from a number of different external experts in this area. It's a near real-time service that's deeply integrated with the API of Facebook and others, and it will actively capture any kind of comments that are made and or deleted, as well as the applicable metadata with them. So if we ever end up in a situation where we have to pull comments and use them in some sort of a court type of a setting, doing it this way is really the only admissible way of doing it, because it actively captures the metadata, and we can prove that it's not like just a screenshot that somebody manipulated. The next item is the elephant in the room that I've just found out today, which I wasn't really happy with, is our email hosting. Right now that's with Google. We currently pay for 185 users. So I have 185 users that have an email address here. Everybody has an email address. It's not free. Initially, when we went with G Suite with Google, it's under state pricing, and that contract price at $82 comes up to just shy of 16 grand. Up until this year, the contract is valid through the end of the year for G Suite, but Google has gone through and done an entire platform upgrade to what they now call Google Workspace. Google Workspace has a number of different features and other stuff in it. It's Google's new upgraded platform. They consider G Suite to be legacy. Reaching out to our vendor just to verify pricing that we'd be able to get it. She replied back to me that next year in January or February, Google is going to force everybody to upgrade to their Workspace. And if you don't, then they will essentially cut you off. We relied fairly heavily on Google Drive, all of the other apps that go in it, not to mention our email, groups and everything else. And that increase, as you can see there, goes up to $141 per user per year. Sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but it still is 35% off of what typical retail pricing is. I'm in a bit of a quandary with that, because I did, and the reason I put it in red there is that that number was at 16,000 for this year. And now I have a quote here in front of me that is $26,100. So there's an extra 10 grand. I'm not really sure where that's going to come from this year that I need to come up with in order to be able to renew. And then next year, they assured me that it would be state contract pricing through the end of next year, so we can rely on that number to be the same. So that tops out for 2020 at $55,000 for professional services and fees. And 10 grand I need to come up with somewhere this year.
All right, so you're saying that, let's see.
I guess the other two there is that, go ahead, sorry.
Need to add, so you're saying you need to add about 10,000 to 2021 to cover the increase?
That would be correct.
Is that for next year or this year?
It's a 12-month term, but it renews in December of this year. So it'd be like December 14th through December 13th of next year. So it's effectively 2022's, but it comes in 2021's budget. So it's end of the year purchase. So I'd be paying for it again in 2022 for the end of 2022 and then 2023. It's just kind of where it ended up at. Oh, and then the other one, I'm sorry, the last line item there. I did throw 10 grand in there for project support. Project support, this would be for professional services, third party, to be able to come in and assist with upgrades of, dedicated complex systems, servers, networking, stuff that I know quite a bit about, but it's always good to have a third party eye on it, just make sure that everything goes well when certain pieces are rolled out. I don't have a specific one that goes on, and like I said, there's some other elephants sitting in the back of the room there that I need to address on network and servers and storage and some of that stuff too, and this would assist with that. But that's where the 55,000 comes from. The other couple items in there that did kind of glaze over in the Cassell, there's a management system there, the 310-100. Again, that increases year over year. That's a system that I push out for all of the computers and stuff that's managed here. It helps with automation of patching, security. Allows me to be able to centrally manage, do remote control, be able to troubleshoot remotely and that kind of stuff. And then the last one there is our backup solution. This one does increase year over year. This backs up all of our core services, on-premise solutions, all of our legacy database applications like Coins, like Cassell. It also backs up some of the core users' computers, like myself and some of the other servers that are around here. That replicates to an appliance on site. And then that also replicates every night up to an unlimited cloud storage that's encrypted, which is part of why we use so much bandwidth with Emory, is because of all of that replication that happens. But that's professional services in a nutshell there.
Okay. Anything else to add, Matt?
Other than just briefly mentioning again, that email that I sent to you yesterday. I do need to figure out what is going on with the or what I can do this year. The network setup that we have here, which includes a core router, all of our branch location routers, the secure tunnels that facilitate all that, the Wi-Fi access points. I had identified to upgrade. Initially, that was supposed to be about a $25,000 project. With all of the other advances, different features and things that are being pushed out, to upgrade that hard network to a compliant solution. Basically means it's just an expensive vendor. This one would be a Juniper solution, which I was looking at. It came in at about $75,000. There's another option to that. Part of the reason for that push is because the network stuff that we have right now isn't fully federally compliant, but not all the users that we have here have to be in a compliant state. Like, they don't all access criminal justice information stuff. And so I could potentially look at doing like a secure workspace to them. That would create an ongoing cost. There might be some other solutions that that could work that I am looking at, but I do need to have another conversation with you outside of here. I'm sure I'm going to have to come in front of the board here again this year to hash this out for next year, or I'm sorry, this year, and then next year I mentioned that our on-premise servers, storage and whatnot, collectively known as a SAN, a storage area network, is in need of upgrading. The system that we have right now, knock on wood as I say this publicly, has been running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week since 2012. It's been doing a great job, but it's in need of some new stuff before it doesn't have the opportunity of having a clean move. I need to get some hard numbers on what that's going to look like. I need to have some discussions with internal staff on how much usability that they're going to use. I need to take a couple other audits with some physical servers that we have. But I anticipate coming back to you with a fairly expensive proposition in that regard, to the tune of around probably $100,000 to replace those servers and storage. Like I said, I don't want to get too far out in the weeds on either of those big projects, but they do definitely need to be addressed. And in that same vein, I haven't had a staff member for most of this year too. So if you looked at salaries, actuals and current allotments, I do have some extra money that I could throw at it if we're able to move that around some. I don't know if that makes sense to do or not, but just throw that out there that I do have a little bit of excess in this year that might be able to take care of, that inventory discrepancy, possibly, taking some of that money and pushing it towards upgrading some of these network things that need to get taken care of too.
All right.
That's all.
Well, yeah, I come up with some proposal for an amendment for 2021. I mean, I tend to try to, stick with the bottom line. So if we can do that, then we can move money around.
Yeah, and that's what I was hoping for, is that, with everything said and done, if we're just looking at the bottom line and not looking at all the intricate details of this, I don't think that I'm going to go over, even if we included a bunch of this stuff. And then with emergency management too, Jenny over there says that she possibly has a couple of different grants that are available that are specifically meant to go towards cybersecurity. So we could use some of that towards some of these other solutions too. So,
okay.
Yeah, I will get that hashed out for you, but we need to have a discussion, and I'm sure I'll be in front of you guys again here.
All right. Yeah. And yeah, any of those big capital costs, make a big list and prioritize it.
Yep. Those are the couple of big ones I got.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Matt? Okay, thank you, Matt.
Thanks, guys. If you don't mind, I'm going to hang on and watch the rest of these here too. If you guys have any questions, I'll be idling by.
Okay. Okay, John, are you on?
I am here. I'm not sure if you get the up-to-date one though. Do you? Yeah, it looks like you do.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's some entries that have been put into these.
I put some in just now, actually. Yeah, you've got the up-to-date one. Yeah. Okay, so the salaries, I guess I don't have to go over that, Chris. You automatically update that?
Yeah, we're working on that separately.
Okay. Overtime is 0, which is easy. Don't have to argue that one. And benefits is there again. Subscription and memberships, that's really belonging to the American Planning Association, International Code Council. Those are the two I belong to and are certified in. No one else is certified in any one of those, but they do have memberships in APA. So that's included in that list. I mean, if questions.
Okay, so we've got 22 or 2,000 is the total for what's in this worksheet.
Yeah.
Is that how much you need?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Public notices.
We've left that in there just because we do have things that are still noticed in the paper, especially when it's got to do with the general plan, and just and not so much public noticing as it is just advertising. And we always want to have a little bit there in case we need to tap into it. It's probably not going to be that high, but
Okay, so what is it probably gonna be?
yeah, geez. You nickel and diming things here, huh? So I would say 3,000. We could drop it to. What have we got here historically? We had 2,100 last year. I'd say 2,100 is probably okay.
All right, I mean, there is some variation.
Yeah,
But-
you know, but we're almost all digital now, so it's really just, you know, paper publication that's still there.
Okay. And then travel,
And that's to go to conferences. Here again, there's been no travel this year, as you probably know. So there's been a little bit, of course, just going out to various things, CCP or whatever it is. So this would be going to potentially a state conference and maybe a national conference. Have we ever financed that before American Planning Association? Next year is in San Diego, which is not a really nice place to go to. Of course, you have to suffer to go there.
okay.
Yeah, so that's covering at least one state conference and potentially one national conference, or maybe two state conferences, one of the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Office supplies, let's see, so up quite a bit this year. I guess that's just from all this general plan stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we get some things from Carrie every once in a while, just keeping our stationery up. And we do use paper a bit more than you do, I guess. So
Not use any paper.
you don't use any paper. Yeah, well, we use easel paper, and we actually got 3 or 4 easels we bought this year too. So those we'll be using. So I mean, yeah.
I mean, you're on track this year to be way over budget.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping we could steal that for somewhere else. Like Matt says, some of that will have to equal out somewhere else.
Plans are not over on everything. So let's see. So we've got, I guess, you know, according to how you're spending, that's 3,000 is probably pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
And then equipment maintenance. Let's see. We're gonna have to switch over the copier contract.
Oh, yeah, right. That's the one that we were putting in there. Yeah.
And of course, I think you had another one that what we were paying on before.
Oh, we got rid of that one. Yeah.
I think, yeah. I want to go look and see if I can tell how much that was. I guess it kind of depends on how much you need it, but
How much we need the copier?
yeah, I mean, the maintenance contract is not, I don't think it's a set price.
They typically go on copy counts.
Yeah, it would be like Les Olson, probably. Let me just see how much. No, this is not what I want. Oh, software's not cooperating right now. But, let's see. So I would say,
You're thinking that's going to go up? Is that what you're thinking?
well, it's going to go up. It might be best to leave it at 1,200 just to cover the switch over from
Probably, yeah. I don't think it'll
our
be.
your office because you got our good copier.
Yeah. Sorry about that. But We're putting it to good use.
All right.
What do we got next here?
Well, I mean, let's see, 500 is probably a little more than you'd use, but, I mean, it could go up if you drove a lot.
Yeah,
We
we're
got-
keeping it. Yeah, we're keeping it the same for now.
But I
500.
mean, historical spending has never actually gotten that high.
No, I'm just picking a number that was put in there. I'm not sure who put it in there, but
Yeah. It's not a lot, but.
Yeah.
Anyway, professional and technical.
okay, let me get into this. So I've got a bit of a memo there. We're looking at hopefully keeping Mary Hoffine there for archiving at $10,000 roughly for the first 3 months. And the rationale is there, we have about 1,000 paper files that just need to be assembled. She's not going to do the digitization, somebody else will do that. And that's just scanning it. We need to get a structure together. She'll organize the paper files, put a policy together, procedure, work with you guys too on that. And that'll hopefully feed into a county-wide policy if we don't have one, or at least update it. We've got a lot of planning documents that need to be digitized, and they'll help for kind of storage and retrieval too at the same time. So that whole back room needs attention, as do the flat files.
Yeah, so how did you come up with 10,000?
I just figured $27 an hour for.
Well, she's getting paid right now as associate planner, which is second highest level position in the department.
Yeah.
And,
So
we're not going to pay that for archiving though.
Yeah, I know, but she's, it takes a fair bit of expertise to go through all of the files and pick out the right ones and make sure that she's restoring those right. I don't know if I put them at an associate planner level, but I just kept her where she was. So I don't know if that makes a lot of difference there, Chris, because what did I do? I did 24 hours a week for the first 3 months.
All right, well, that's a big maybe.
Yeah.
And then public strategist, what's that one?
So instead of doing that within our planning projects list, which would be a typical capital plan or master plan, I should say, we would prefer to do that in-house. And that's one of those things you want to keep hold of if you can, because it maintains continuity and not.
No, say that again. It's for what?
For a public master plan, public strategy master plan.
And what is that?
So it's engagement, mapping all the decision-making. We've got a lot of committees. It's putting how those structure works together, taking a look at how we engage the public. This is part of the strategic plan, and how the commission engages, how the county and all the boards that are identified engage, and improving that decision-making, taking a look at a gap analysis, identifying resources. There's usually no capital involved. It's just mainly staff resources and how that's focused. There's a communication strategy that usually comes out of that, and is taking a look at how all the other elements across the county communicate. So it's pretty broad-based.
Okay. So I'm going to say that those are going to have to be commission decision points and
Yeah.
subject to being cut, I guess is one thing I'd say too.
Yeah. Of course, who's arguing for this? You are, or are we helping?
Yeah, you'll probably have to help with that one in terms of describing what the product is of these two.
Okay.
And then, code enforcement. So let me think.
So that's that came in at 15,000. I didn't change any of that. It's just, I'm assuming you put the number in there, but some of that's just working with partnerships to clean up some of the hot button areas of the county.
How much Evan from Solid Waste said it would take to do the big Thompson cleanup?
Well, I don't know if we can finance that, but we've got other hot spots besides that one.
Yeah. So anyway, this is another, I would say, sort of commissioner decision point on how much they want to budget for assisting with, community cleanup around the county?
Yeah, we would leverage that, right? As you're saying, it's as an assistant. So we try to leverage, there's a couple of nonprofit resources out there that we could probably leverage the money with.
Yeah. Anyway, again, we'll revisit that in November when we have our meetings with the commissioners.
Yeah, that meeting, by the way, that format for that meeting, do you usually have department heads come in and do a little song and dance, or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Polish your shoes.
Yeah, good. Wear your best tie. I got a Mary tie, that'll help.
All right, planning project.
Okay, I know these go out for a number of years, and I just put this number down because I think I'm not sure how you're doing that budget, but it seemed like you were doing that on a running year total with that 150,000. I did have a question before you get into this though, and that's where the Public Lands Initiative falls. I think you were taking some of that from here, but I have not included that. So
let's just start. Let's go down the list in order so we don't get too confused.
Yeah, so the CIP one is really more your baby, I think, but it's still a big planning element.
So the capital facilities plan, that's what
Capital
that is.
improvement plan, yeah.
Okay, so that comes out of a different budget, so I'm going to bonk that off. And then let's see, Parks and Rec, what's that?
That's the Park and Rec master plan. These are all coming from the general plan. These are all generated by the general plan. These are action master plans.
Okay.
So these are gaps that we're seeing just as we're going through the analysis. A Parks and Rec master plan doesn't exist. There's a Trails master plan, but there's lots of gaps there.
And so you're thinking this is all going to be consulted out?
Well, that's the quickest way of getting them done. We could do them in-house, but it would take twice as long.
Yeah.
Or 3 times as long. I mean, so I put some of those in 2022. Not all of them are in 2022. There's only, as we know, that you can only do so many things at one time.
So in sum total, like just between all years, we set a budget for 140,000 for the general plan.
For how many years?
All the years that it takes to do it.
Okay.
So that's the budget. And so what we have for next year is going to be, 140,000 minus whatever we spent this year.
60. Well, no, we'll be spending some of that next year. But anyway, it'll be 60 if it's multi-year. Because 60 is where the land use plan's coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're doing the rest of that in-house. So there's 90 left over. So that's what the 40, 60, what do we got here? I'm not sure where you put Parks and Rec, to tell you the truth, but I did not put it in. I didn't put it in our budget. Resource management and regional planning, I put in our budget, that's 60. Public safety.
So I'm trying to just determine, so within the context of the capital improvement plan and the impact fee analysis, they do an analysis on Parks and Recs already.
Well, capital improvement does all capital. It's transportation too. It's all the infrastructure. Right?
It would also include Park and Rec facilities and needs.
Oh yeah, that's only a part of the plan. That's only a project list of the plan.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess trying to determine whether we're duplicating planning.
No. Parks and Rec master plan will have a list of projects, but that's only 20% of the plan. It's like the transportation master plan. It'll have a list of projects too, but it's only about 20% of the plan.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is if you read our capital facilities plan, the last one we did, plus impact fee plan, it in itself covered Parks and Recs, and then when we adopted it, it was incorporated into the general plan upon adoption.
Yeah, but that's fiscal impact analysis though. That doesn't include all of the analysis of active recreation, passive recreation. It doesn't include, well, trails are usually wrapped into that too. So all the elements that go to a master plan generate projects. And then what the capital improvement plan does, and I'm not trying to correct you, Chris, I'm just saying this is what I'm used to, is that the capital improvement or facilities plan then takes a look at that list of projects with the rationale, because the master plan will have the rationale, It actually builds the partly builds the rationale for you. And then it takes that and starts doing the fiscal analysis to see what those costs are and how they can be recovered, and it starts assigning them over a number of years and generates the code or the bylaw.
All right, so, yeah.
So I don't think you
Well-
can, just looking at master planning, I don't think you can remove the cost of the master plan from the capital improvement or have that covered because they aren't duplicated.
Well, they sort of, I mean, if we do it the same way as we did the last one, they would kind of be, because they did actually inventory, existing facilities, project out future need, all that kind of stuff was included in what happened.
Well, and that's kind of doing it, what I would say is backwards. You're actually taking a look at something that hasn't been done and trying to develop projects around it without a master plan, which you can do for a fiscal impact. But the best way to do it is through a master plan first and then generate projects like we're doing the transportation plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's normally with the way I'm used to doing it. So you can do it the other way too, of course, because you can do a bylaw or a code around the capital improvement plan, the facilities plan, and then generate projects from that too. But normally the first thing they do is take a look at what master planning has been done and what projects are listed. And if there's no Parks and Rec master plan, well, they've done it kind of an analysis before. So you just update what was there before. Yeah.
Well, so are all of these associated with general plan?
Yeah. Yeah, the general plan phase 2 one is really the next step after the top-down approach, and that's the community outreach. That's more internal than anything. That's just helping a little bit with our outreach, working with neighborhoods. So there's not very much money in there.
Well, we've got to cut this budget way down.
Well, that's 2023.
Expensive, especially for a plan that everybody ignores.
Well, not now.
Yeah, I know, not now, but
Of course, every planner says that. You probably met before, but anyway, that's 2023. The social one's 2023. Economic development would be 20. So that should be 2022. I don't know why it says 2021. And that would be August potentially doing his pitch. I think he's coming up next, isn't he? Or is he done?
he's waiting patiently, I hope.
I know he's waiting. Sorry about this. So and then public safety, sorry, that should have been 2023. So economic development should have been 2022. It's up to August though. Public safety is 2023. That's the year after next. Regional planning, hopefully we'll do next year. Resource management won't be a small one for next year. Parks and Rec could be the year after, I guess. So really, we're just looking at the 150,000. We're just taking 60 more out of it, or 70 more out of it. So it's still 150, less than 150.
So we're going to do an economic development master plan in August's budget.
Right.
Anyway, we'll need to revisit all this whole concept. I mean, typically we spend a year getting a master plan up or a general plan update done, just 1 year, and then call it good.
We don't do any master planning.
Well, general plan, master plan, same thing. I don't know.
Well, the transportation plan's a master plan.
Yeah, and I mean, they're kind of interchangeable terms that I've heard a lot of times. And there's plenty of addendums to the general plan, which are all these different master plans. And so I guess we'll have to, prioritize what we can afford given the resources we've, allocated. I guess, if we say 140,000 was the original budget for our general plan update, and we've already, already spent, committed 60. That leaves us 80,000.
Yeah. Yeah. So for 2022, it's still less than that.
So if the commission is going to be weighing in on this eventually, I think what I would find helpful is just some different options with, very like this is what we can get done for an additional $80,000 or whatever. And this is, if we were willing to spend 50,000 more, here's what we would do.
Yeah,
I think
well,
that-
I'll leave all these in, but I need to figure out, a realistic bottom line very soon. And so if I, leave big money sitting in these accounts that, I think is potentially unrealistic. I mean, we can add it back in, and I'll just make a note, but I kind of want to, it would be my goal to stay within budget on the general plan in total.
Well, yeah, that would certainly be one of the options is what we can do within the existing, the budget that we set.
What I'm trying to do here is just like match that right now. So I'm just kind of zeroing some of these out until we get to that 80,000. I mean, we'll come back. I just want to get more of a realistic figure given, the original budgeted amount. And then, depending on what our bottom line is looking like, I think we can come in and start adding things back in if we want. But, looking at it from the big picture of all of our needs, and that's kind of, one of an important part of the process, in my opinion, is to get, some of these requests, or all of these requests, all the capital project requests, planning, everything, that's kind of would be a commission decision point, identify how much money we have to work with, and then start prioritizing the list. And so these, would go on the list. But I'm just trying to set the budget relative to the original one at this point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, except you left two plans in there we probably wouldn't go ahead with, or at least one plan. But that's okay. We can discuss that later.
All right. So which one?
It's in the memo. It's in the memo.
Well, I like it to be in this software here.
Okay,
So
yeah, so you zeroed out Parks and Rec. I left till the last part of the quarter of 2022, even though it shows all 2022. So that probably could be, and I don't know if that's our budget, Chris. That could be.
What?
I don't know.
Priority.
I would drop Parks and Rec to 20,000 for next year. And then resource management's 20. I would leave that in myself because that's a state law or state statute. 40,000 I would leave there because that's still, what is that, 60? That's 80 there. Yeah, and then the rest are all 2023, except you've zeroed out the ECDEV one, which is an August one, yeah. Yeah, so the rest are 20.
So we've developed a resource management plan, which is kind of just forced upon us, by the state. Is the state requiring that we update that?
Well, I was going to relook at that. I think it is in need of update, but it might be the next year. So that's an if, that's a maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't spend money on that unless we were forced to, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that myself.
So maybe.
Anyway, the only thing I'm trying to do is get the 80,000 in right now, and then we can revisit this.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Where are we? Planning grants. I didn't put anything in there. We'll go after a bunch of them. Did I put anything in there?
This is where we pay for the vistas.
Okay, yeah, there's 2 vistas there, yeah.
So I put that in.
Yeah, okay, good.
Engineering fees I've bumped up in 2021 because I wanted, the potential to be able to have our contract engineers with more inspections because we've had some trouble.
Yeah.
But, the reality is that it's hard to get them to do it even if you have the budget for it because they're not available. And so it's kind of wishful thinking in a way. I would like to see more responsiveness for the, inspections from our engineer. And Bill's doing a lot of inspections, on behalf of Horrocks.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that today, Bill and I. So he's seeing maybe a junior engineer working in-house here, maybe under Bill Jackson. What's
a junior engineer?
What's that?
What is a junior engineer?
Well, somebody that does inspections but doesn't necessarily seal drawings and doesn't do the full
Yeah.
design review, and it would still work in-house. So it would be more like an engineering tech, but still have an engineering designation. So a junior engineer, and then we'd still use Horrocks. So I think we could balance some of that, but that's the difficulty with that is if you got a salaried position there, which is going to be a bit more expensive, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if we were going to go that route, might even just consider going full engineer. I mean, part of the issue is that, you know, these are our costs, right? You know, it's between 35, 40,000 for land use related engineering, you know, and if we got an in-house engineer, you know, we'd be looking at least 160,000 probably a year between benefits for a real engineer. But yeah, it's just tough because it's a big, obviously a big increase in costs. I mean, there would be a lot of value to it that would present, but maybe I'll just put this as another commission point type decision. Because I do think that we've got some issues with engineering. I'm not quite sure how to.
Yeah, I'm sure this has come up with the commission before as far as how that resource can be handled.
Yeah.
We're limping along, but it's not that bad of a limp, I don't think, as far as contract services.
I mean, and we might be able to use Johnson Mill a little bit more too. I just want more responsiveness on, you know, if sometimes we have trouble and we need more responsive inspections and engineers, and when our main engineer only comes down once every 2 weeks, you know, it's tough to resolve issues in a way that the neighbors and everything would be happy with.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So
okay, cell phone, that's 3. That's Jenna, Elisa, Josh, and myself, 4.
And let's see, how do we calculate this?
You know, I don't know. I think it's $40 a month, isn't it? $50 a month allowance.
It depends on.
So there's 3 times 5, 3 times 4 times, what is that? 500?
Well, anyway, I'll check with Renee on this because I think that figure doesn't include Josh, and so he might need to actually bump that up to.
Yeah, you're right. It might be 600 a year. Yeah. So
anyway,
projects. I don't know what special projects was or is. So
I'm not really sure. We didn't use it this year, and in the past hasn't really been much. So
capital equipment, I think, is the car, which is 8,500. I think you put that in for, and then computers. Matt, I think, had 1,200 down there, so I tried to even that out with the number of units, because I think there's 1 laptop upgrade. Is Matt still there? No, 1 laptop upgrade and 2 desktops for 2022.
Oh, hold on. So I'm gonna, because this isn't capital, so I'm gonna bounce that out of here. And then.
Oh, it's an inventory. Oh, okay.
So you said you had 2 desktops.
It's 3,200 altogether. Yeah, it's 3. There's 3.
Then
laptop. Yeah.
1,200. 1. What other inventory? Do you have any other inventory?
No, that's it.
Okay.
And then schooling is.
So this lease is for code enforcement for this vehicle. Okay, schooling
is conferences, APA conference and the state conference.
And are these just admission fees?
There's conference fees, yeah.
Okay, so how many people are going to these conferences?
We probably have 2 going to the AUPA one and then one to the APA conference. That's the San Diego one.
The AUPA entrance is 1,000 each.
It'll be less than that probably, but
How much?
800 each.
And then the APA is how much?
I had 1,700. So
For one?
it depends whether you present or not. So I usually try to present if I can, so I'll get a break. But
that's just the regular cost without presenting?
it's a 3-day conference. Yeah. I mean, it depends whether it's actually face-to-face. You can do a lot of these things online or hybrid too. So if you do the full 3 days, I think that's what you're looking at.
Okay. All right.
How'd we do? Thanks for slogging through this, Chris.
We're okay. I mean, we've got a lot to figure out later.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thanks for doing it though. It's good.
And yeah, so we'll have to come back and revisit some of these with the commission.
Yeah. Look forward to it.
What we want to do and how much we want to spend and the timeline on some of this stuff. But anyway, good for now, I'd say. I mean, it's a reasonable number and helps me out, with getting a bottom line, and then, like I say, if there's money that's available, we might come back, and be able to add more, depending on what the committee wants to do.
Yeah, and we'll be at the top of that list, I'm sure, with Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be. Anything else, John?
No, that's it. That's all I've got.
Okay. And anybody else have any questions or comments regarding planning and zoning? Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, John.
Goodbye.
Okay. Is August still on? Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Thanks for waiting.
No problem, learning lots.
Okay, so get over to the Fund 23. So this fund is got a lot of legacy stuff in it, and so August and I have been talking about rearranging this, moving everything over to a new fund and organizing it better. But the total amount of money is going to, remain the same because the budget is dictated by revenue. But I just want to give the caveat that we'll probably take this budget, rearrange it, put all the, accounts that we need in a new fund, stop using Fund 23 just because it would be really difficult the way the accounts are set up to do reporting for the state as is required. And it's just confusing to do the budgeting too. As you'll kind of see, there's a lot of accounts that aren't used and different types of expenses mixed into different departments. Anyway, so the big revenue source for my projection for TRT in 2022, $3,152,000. And then, do you want to explain what labels is again, real quick, for everybody?
Sure. So Robert has a feature on the Discover Moab website that allows interested parties to request a travel brochure, and they can opt in or out of having their information be distributed to anybody that wants it. And so we sell that list basically to local businesses that want it. So it's like super small, like 10 cents per some number of emails, basically contact informations. And that's a program that he's been doing for a long time. And I'm not sure how many people participate, but that's what that revenue stream is.
Okay.
And Chris, the big number, is that the full 37% of TRT collections? So
Yes.
it includes economic development and conventions, film, okay.
So this is a 37% cut. Yeah, then Thompson, this is just a placeholder for now. I actually need to run out what their balance will be next year, but we're not going to get any new revenue. And so what Thompson Welcome Center will have available next year is just going to be the balance at the end of the year. This is just kind of a rough guesstimate, but I need to revisit this after I project out to the end of the year and then, you know, figure out what they're going to have left. So that's still a bit in the works. So a little bit on interest because there's some fund balance that gets interest. Then the travel council grant. So this, August, do you want to explain?
Sure. So historically, this is the Utah Office of Tourism's cooperative matching grant program. We've applied for this grant every year except for 2019. Basically, we apply with the project. They give us 50% upfront, 50% after program completion. But that's just an anticipated yield based on historic amounts of money we've received from that program.
Okay. And then the $200,000 is the Rural County Economic Development Grant. Last year's, I think it was last year's SB 95 enacted that.
Yep. So last year we received 95 grand from that program, and this year we'll be receiving the full. Well, we've done everything on our end to receive the $200,000, but our application hasn't been fully approved yet.
But anyway, we're expecting, you know, the same for next year as well. I think we actually processed this through the general fund before, but I want to move this over to economic development in the future.
Yeah, that'll help us do reporting.
Pass-through, it's essentially pass-through funding because it's grants that go out to our various businesses around the county. Okay, so if we needed to draw money out of the fund balance, these are the accounts that we'd use to do it. So first up on the expenditure side, we looked at this budget briefly before, but this is the budget for rec, film, and conventions, and the way that we come up with the total number is based on statute, which says that we can spend no more than 1/5 of the 37% of the TRT on establishing recreation, film, and conventions, establishing or promoting. So you just want to walk through this,
Sure.
August?
Yep. So the event funding line item, the historic numbers in there are from the program that the Travel Council Advisory Board has been running, or I guess the Travel Council with input from the Advisory Board for marketing expenditures to support folks like the Folk Fest and the Music Fest to do marketing on their own. And that's what those old numbers, so that's the 21,000, 13,000, 28,000 numbers are. And there's a fund in the other area for that marketing expense, but we wanted to create a fund that was a little bit more broad and not specifically marketing related. So we're calling this Establishing Rec, Film, and Convention Resources. So the idea would be that if we're getting requests from events or other community entities that are looking for support from TRT money that can fall into recreation, film, or convention resources that are not marketing specific spend, that's what this would come out of. And this was recommended by the Travel Council Advisory Board in their list of prioritized expenditures. Chris, I don't know if you wanted to share that document or if that's for another time.
We don't need to go in too much depth because we're running.
It was recommended by the advisory board. I'll leave it at that.
So anyway, I mean, this is local event funding. It doesn't necessarily, you know, at this point, it doesn't have to be marketing, but, you know, just supporting local events.
Yeah. So that could be, you know, if any local organization is looking for support for their event, it could come out of this funding because it's not tied to transit guests.
Okay. And then, oh yeah, so as most are probably aware, the city is requesting that we take over the entire film commission. And so we did put in, approximation of what that budget is with the city. Another decision point for the commission, but obviously if we, double the film commission budget, then going to cut into some of these other possible expenditures.
Yeah, so
And
the
then
160 for now is just basically currently what's budgeted for next year.
Yeah. Then this 137 is the amount that we agreed to send to the Recreation Special Service District for youth sports programming and also their recreation grant program. So this was a part of that district allocations workshop. Moab Art Trails puts in a request for 10,000, and we've approved that in this year, and then I think in years past also.
So why is that coming under recreation and film rather than just tourism establishment?
Because, well, I guess the tourism promotion, the definition, is, and it could be, I mean, if they use it for marketing intended to bring people in from out of town, then it could go to tourism promotion.
And I thought the definition also included development, and so it seems like putting lots of nice sculptures in downtown is developing a tourism draw, even if we don't market on it.
Well, the development was in reference to developing marketing. But yeah, I mean, they're planning on using this money to purchase a sculpture, I think, for permanent installation. I think that, what you're getting at, Kevin, we would have to request a memo from Christina Sloan. So you might want to put that request in so that we can have an idea of the legal parameters that we're working under.
Okay. But I guess even if it doesn't fall under the tourism side of things, are we confident that the sculptures, they aren't film and they aren't conventions and they aren't really recreation, so.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
so it seems
like last year.
I would say that it, that it's would fall in. I don't think that anybody would ding us on it because it could be considered, walking around town. I don't know.
I think that might have been why they called it the Art Trails program, because if it's like,
yeah, I mean, it's intended,
by the way, but
to walk around. I mean, it's some type of art recreation. I don't know.
Right. You go spot to spot to check out all the art, and that's a recreation experience. But that's a question for Christy, and we can follow up with her as well. Who's the program director for that?
Yeah, so, I mean, it probably would fit better under TRCC, but again, with TRCC, we're using that money to offset expenses in the general fund, so everything that we send out of the county with TRCC is that much less money we have to offset general fund expenses, and so tend to try to hold on to that TRCC for paying for OSTA and the Grand Center. And then Trail Ambassadors, this is kind of based on Maddie giving me, some concept of how many hours she thinks we could use for the Trail Ambassadors. And so I projected those number of hours out, and based on hourly rates, it comes out to around 80,000. And then the responsible trail promotion or responsible recreation promotion, this money, we've been using this year for water bottles that the trail ambassadors hand out that have responsible messaging, and anything having to do, with responsible recreation, creation, or establishment or promotion could come out of this. The county did pass a resolution to provide the city with $150,000 in funding for the pilot shuttle program that's going to happen. They've actually requested, and I'll change this later, but they've requested $20,000 this year. And then in this case, the remainder I've split into 3 years. So paying out a third of the remainder of $230,000 over 3 years. So this would be the first installment of that. And this pretty much is that total 1/5 of the 37%. We did get a request in for the stage. How much was that, August? Do you remember?
Sorry, say it again.
For the stage?
I believe the request was like about 160 for the whole stage.
How much?
160,000.
So anyway, that's another big request that I'm just going to put it here in the notes.
I think it's like 167 off the top of my head.
And I'm not really sure because it's a large capital purchase where if that would fit in with the legal parameters of the 37% side or not. I mean, Christina,
we were talking about TRCC for that, but
yeah, but like I say, if we pay that out of TRCC, then that 167,000 is going to have to be made up for somehow, which usually ends up being property tax or the 2 unrestricted sales taxes we have, which are very lean revenue streams.
Right.
I guess my point is if we pull it out of TRCC, it's directly impacting the general fund's bottom line.
Sure.
And so, it's something, that I need to, I guess, again, touch base with Christina on about whether or not something like that could be paid out of the 37% side of the TRT or not. I'm not sure.
So Chris, going back up to the responsible trail promotion, that's, since most of these trail users are tourists, that's another one I think that could also be paid out of the, the bigger fund or tourism promotion.
Okay, well, again,
and I just reread the definitions, but if you want Christina to write something on that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I would just say, whatever the commission, wants, but I do know, I'm, quite certain that the hotel lobby wants that to be for marketing, and a lot of locals do too. And so, it's just, it's something that I think that, we need a legal opinion on, in my opinion, but if Christina is willing to defend it, then, we can consider moving this stuff around.
Yeah, and I guess I'd like to second that. On our travel council advisory board, we do have reps from the hotel industry, and so they're well aware of how we will end up spending this money, and if we don't have a good legal ground on moving some of these things into the other categories, like that, I think there's a potential for litigation if people get upset about it.
I think, one of the things we can spend it on is developing tourism, and that's pretty broad. So, and I checked the definition. It's not developing marketing. It just says the promotion. Where is it? Marketing is one of 4 categories that falls under that. we could use development, encouragement, solicitation, or marketing. So anyway,
Well, I guess my point is that if we ruffle too many feathers, they're going to go to the legislature. That's my point, and I don't want to lose ground legislatively.
okay.
But to be fair, Kevin, I've thought the same things, looking at the same definitions that you have. So just trying to figure out what we can do and what we can't do. So I'm on the same page.
Okay. So anyway, this is, like I said, this is kind of set right now based on that 1/5 of the 37%. And then the next department is the what's called Travel Council Administration, although there's kind of a hodgepodge of things in here.
So, and then this is.
So maybe you could just focus on some of the, maybe try to zero in on some of this stuff that you think's of particular interest, so that we don't end up at 5 p.m.
Right. So I guess for context, the Travel Council Administration Fund or account 4236 and National Promotion 4240 both are combined to hit that remaining 7/15 of the 37% that yields that $1.4 million tourism promotion spend that isn't diversification, that isn't rec film and convention, just so that we're oriented there. So, I mean, for me, a lot of this, obviously, this is my first time going through this budget process. So this is kind of taking a lot of just looking at what's past numbers are in there and kind of guesstimating what fits, looking at transactions historically under these line items to figure out what it's been spent on in the past. So for travel expenses, I just kind of looked at what was in there and kind of got an estimate that looked about average, maybe a little above average. Office supplies is pretty straightforward. Utilities are pretty straightforward. The phone is the Frontier landline. Under professional technical services, that's just we have a postage machine that we lease that we run the travel brochures through that automatically puts postage on that based on the address, and we just ship to USPS straight up out of our office. So there's an annual lease on that machine, and then there's also the Les Olson company lease for the printer copier. And then I put some buffer in there for unanticipated needs. For administrative services for this $20,000, historically, I couldn't figure out what that was used for. I just put this at 0 for this year.
Oh no, so we do actually need to add that in. So that's again, that's for compensation for the general fund, HR, payroll, commission admin, etc.
Okay. All right,
so that's
over, but we'll
put it over a little bit. But anyway, yeah, that needs to be in.
Okay, that's why we do this, I guess.
So on the previous line, professional and technical services, is that a typo or is it 10% of what it was previously? From 75,000.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. So basically, it used to contain a hodgepodge of different services. So it included professional contracting that Love Communications provided to us. It included subscriptions to data sources. It included software subscriptions, and it included office equipment leases. So for this particular line item, I just zeroed it down to the equipment leases, and then there's another account in the promotion fund where I put the kind of professional consulting, the software, and the data. So that's why that is so different this year compared to past years.
Okay, you got moved to a different budget.
I just cleaned it up because it was a catch-all for a lot of things that didn't make it very easy to understand what was happening on the inside.
Okay.
And then postage is pretty straightforward, just sending out bills and kind of not promotional related postage. Just standard office that was requested last year, so I just kept it the same. Cell phone allowance for staff was I just put what was in there for last year. I think I need to probably check with Renee to ensure that that number is accurate for everybody we have on staff.
So do you think all your staff needs a cell phone allowance?
I think so. I mean, we all take calls on our cell phones for work. We're all moving about. At least the vast majority of our staff. I can do a reevaluation of that, but I would say that everybody in our staff uses their cell phone for work for sure.
Okay.
And then the fuel line item is gas purchased with the gas card or from the roads department. That's just based on historical spend. Then there's another office supplies line item. So I couldn't really figure out what's the difference between equipment and supplies. So that 250 account versus this 400 account. So I don't know if that's duplicative or what the deal is there. Chris, is there historically a difference between like what that 250 equipment, supplies, and whatever versus the supplies line item should be in other departments?
Well, again, I think, I mean, realistically, we should have a supplies line item and a separately an equipment maintenance line item probably. But, you know, when we transfer all this over to another fund, I think we should consolidate accounts. You know,
Yeah.
We probably only need one supplies item per division of you know, so there's basically going to be a tourism promotion division, rec film convention division, economic diversification, and tourism promotion. And so it's, you know, those four categories, you know, probably need some of each one needs, you know, some of the basic elements of accounts. So we don't need, you know, multiple supply lines in each department or each division. And so we need to probably clean all this up. I mean, this is the way the accounting was when I took over as clerk auditor, and it's just, you know, a big mess, quite honestly. It needs to be redone. But anyway, right now we're just trying to work with it, you know, as is.
Right.
The supplies here, you know, have varied. 1,500 is probably actually, if we were to average these, going to be more than 1,500, so it's below the average.
Right. I think if we combine those two supplies, so you're saying that 250 equipment, supplies, and maintenance. I actually can't see maintenance. It chops it off on my screen. That's more for equipment maintenance than it is for actually purchasing of new supplies.
Well, I don't know, to tell you the truth. I haven't, you know, been the person that's coded these expenses, and so.
Me neither. But okay, fair enough.
Okay, so then carrying on.
Yeah, carrying on. So there's the Throttle Down campaign, Throttle Down in Town. We have signs in the back if we wanted to put more signs up. I don't know if we need to put more money into that particular campaign. I don't know. I put 0 there.
Again, if we did, you know, I would, you know, it would be the responsible recreation budget.
Yep. Then there's this billboard expense, which should be in the promotion fund. So I zeroed it out and moved it over there. So you'll see that when we get to the next, get to the 4240 fund. And then there's insurance, which goes to the Utah Local Government Trust. So I just put the same number we had last year, which seems about on par for average.
Yeah, it's just for your building.
Yeah, we love it. We don't want it to burn down. $300 for public notice for meetings and jobs, I would assume. That was just in there historically. So I just put the same number in from 2021.
Yeah, sometimes you need it.
So put some money on there. And then on permits and leases, we have a payment to Sitla, but I'm not sure really what else we use permits and leases for.
What do you know what the permit with Sitla is for?
Let me see if I can see if there's any information on the transaction. And I want to make sure it is Sitla and not something else. Yeah, so it's showing me a $670 payment to the Trust Lands Administration. That is Sitla, right? The Trust Lands Administration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe if you could figure out what that's for and let me know later.
Sure. Let me make a note of that, actually. And then the reimbursable expenses, put 0 on there. Capital outlay, equipment, and that's if my understanding is correct, Chris, that's for expenditures greater than $5,000. That was used this past year a lot for the noise ordinance related expenses, equipment, and consulting. I'm not anticipating any greater than $5,000 equipment expenses, so I put 0 in. So that's where that is. I'm just going to keep going, so stop me if you want to clarify anything. For inventory, Matt recommended almost all of the computers to be updated as they're at the end of their useful life. And just want to work out some details because Robert and Melissa need some higher computing power because they run Adobe software for graphic design and video editing. So they put Robert's computer at 1700, and I'd like to get a similarly powered computer for Melissa. And then Melissa currently doesn't have monitors, and I put another set of monitors for the Vista position because they're just running off of a laptop at this point. And then I just put some cushion, unanticipated needs.
So you don't know what that is?
Yeah, that was yeah, I'm not sure. We sometimes have like smaller technology expenses like a conference room mic, stuff like that we might need, but
all right.
Just because I'm so new, I wasn't sure exactly what might come up, so I just want to leave some room in there.
Well, it can, but I mean, now I guess we just have to remember we're going to be a little off now because we added in the administrative costs. We're going to be over budget by 20,600, so we'll have to go back, carve out 20,600 to balance. And you might you might decide
might go away.
Take away. So after this, you'll have to go back in and re-zero somehow.
Yep. On training, historically, it looks like we've had various amounts of training. Melissa's actively pursuing an MBA at the moment online, so that's what the 2,500 for this year was. There's some economic development related training courses I'd like to pursue. So that's why I put a little bit more in there for this year. But again, it's an estimate. And then discretionary, again, just some cushion for unanticipated expenses. Maybe that has to go. And then right now we put the expenditure for the rural county grant in here, just so that it matches out with what's coming in the door on the grant revenue side of things. I don't know if that's its final resting place, but that just helps them to zero out.
Yeah, we just want to get it in the budget. So it's, like I say, that's pass-through money. So it comes from the state, and then we just, the committee takes grant applications and then allocates that money out in its grants.
Yep, and then the last one here is that historically we've contributed an amount of money. Last year it was $38,000 to the MIC to, my understanding is to ensure that they have those bathrooms staffed and open to the public.
So I think we do actually have an updated request. I'll have to check it against this.
Okay.
And so I'll do that and check what their request is.
Great.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions on this administrative financial department before we move on? Yeah, it's kind of needs to be cleaned up a lot, and I think we'll do that before we get the hopefully before the tentative budget is due.
Yep.
But it's quite a bit of work to rearrange all this and get it organized. Okay, next up we've got the economic diversification.
Well, do we want to do national promotion while we're still in the kind of promotion mindset?
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
I have my Casella open
And there's also something there labeled Moab promotion. Is that being used? Or?
I think that's it.
Hasn't been used.
Okay,
Just legacy.
got it. Thank you.
Okay, so the first line item here is familiarization tours. So my understanding is historically that's been bringing people interested in doing tourism related business in our community, or perhaps reporters or journalists, or just basically dollars to bring people here to check Moab out for whatever reason under this promotion side of things. It used to be much
yeah,
larger.
along those lines, and you know, I question whether or not that's even compliant with our advertising policy.
Fair enough.
And I did ask Elaine to suspend familiarization tours because we have no control over what these journalists are writing in their articles, whether or not they're compliant with our advertising policy.
Okay. So yeah, as you see in 2021 year to date, the spend is 420, so it didn't really get utilized this year, probably for that reason.
Well, that's because I put the skids on it.
That's what I'm saying.
And I guess that's another question for the commission. You know, my recommendation would be to not participate in that program anymore.
That makes sense to me, for what it's worth.
Cool.
And I mean, we could get rid of 25,000 of the over budget amount by zeroing that out right now.
There you go. You want to pop it in there? I'm fine with that.
Let's do it. Let's zero it out.
And then I guess while we're talking about those familiarization tours in general, there's been some talk about on the diversification side of things, not as like a big strategy, but if we find that there's like a targeted industry or an opportunity to bring people in town and show them the area for non-tourism development. It's not in the line item now, but I think there's some interest in pursuing activities like that, at least on the diversification side.
Okay.
But yeah, so this ad spend, if you open the worksheet, this is where I put the billboard expense that was on the other page, as well as just a general ad spend budget. That doesn't mean that that's like the only money that's dedicated towards advertising. It's just like that's actual ad buy money. So going down to consulting services, well, if you go on the right side in the budget comment section where it says consulting services, that's a fairly high number because it includes basically what we've been paying Love Communications this year annually to support, to do the kind of, not the ad spend, but the kind of marketing research and development side of things. So that's that 100,000 for the renamed consulting services there. And then I've also
I'm a little lost here, August. Where are you? Which line?
If you look at 310005.
This one. Okay.
Yeah. So that basically the way that our current like marketing spend with Love works is that, you know, there's a certain amount that goes toward actual ad buy, and there's a certain amount that goes towards more consulting services and development and data management and those kinds of things. So I just tried to separate those.
Is this like the dashboard?
Yeah, I'm still trying to get an understanding of really how the contract works, but basically they have two main like monthly bill type things. And so some of that is like actual ad spend, and some of that is more like consulting related fees.
So
But
this
yeah, I would say
150,000, does it include ad spend, or is this just the
no.
data? This is all data. Okay.
So I would say the two categories, love communications, 100,000, and this 150, that's specific to like strategy towards ad spend. And then the tourism usage research 50 grand is what we've been talking about with USU and Wayne Freeman and perhaps another vendor to understand actual patterns of visitation when they're here that isn't necessarily, that helps us provide a good product to visitors. So put that under the consulting services there as well. So that could be like live data that you know, local businesses could have access to and as they're planning, you know, demand management.
I just want to, I've got a little bit of familiarity with some of this love stuff, you know, sat in on some meetings back when Elaine was here.
Sure.
And I think it's interesting stuff that we could potentially use more. And given that we have so much money in this budget or fund, I certainly don't feel bad about spending, you know, sending money to Loves to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I want to clarify that like it says Love now, but we'll have to, the contract with them is up, so we'll have to do a competitive bid process for the kind of services they are providing. So it could change potentially the vendor, although they are kind of the leader in the state on this kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I think what they're doing right now is really interesting. Especially they're doing a lot of market research that I think can help us be really targeted in the ad spend that we're doing and making it, you know, targeting towards the kinds of visitation we want rather than just general visitation. So I'm happy to go on. If we
Go on. I've got some questions about some of these, but why don't you finish
Okay,
this
sure.
page first?
If you go back up to what is now 310 001, so formerly Folk Festival line item. This local business advertising program was a recommendation from the Travel Council Advisory Board to basically send some of the ad spend that our department has historically given towards just the market in general, you know, come to Moab type stuff. And, you know, larger businesses in our community have their own marketing budget that they're able to use to attract unique visitors to their property. But some of the local smaller businesses don't necessarily have those resources. And they felt that if we're going to do some ad spend, we should maybe provide some of those resources to smaller businesses and give them kind of a more level ground when it comes to competing with the big guys in town. So that's what that 55 grand was.
And is this ad spending within the county for people already here, or is it like up in Salt Lake or something?
I guess it would be up to the local business how they wanted to spend it, but it would have to be aimed toward, I mean, within the mandate of the program towards attracting transient guests, but attracting them to their business rather than just to our community as a whole. So that'd be some kind of a grant exercise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying.
Okay. And then this next one right below it, this other 55 grand would be the continuation of the historical programming that the Travel Council has done for Folk Fest, Music Fest, to give them marketing funds for their particular events. So that's a historical program. We're just continuing that. And then software subscription, 6,400. If you open up that worksheet, There's 2 in there at this point. So Simple View is the CRM that we use for both economic development and travel council related activities. And then Host Compliance is a software we use to do TRT, and we split it with planning and zoning for code enforcement of Airbnbs. We're considering potentially a different vendor for that, but either way, the line item would be relatively similar, I think. And then under data subscriptions, this is data that we pay for that Love manages for this data dashboard. So we pay Star, which is an industry source for hotel occupancy data. And then All the Rooms does the same thing for Airbnbs and overnight rentals. And then VisaView is a Visa Corporation product that gives us spend anywhere anybody uses a Visa card in town. And that's up for any questions on those. There's a handful more line items down below the sea of zeros.
Yeah, maybe we can just go through real fast.
Yeah, we can go quick. So the first one, that 30 grand, that first one that's labeled postage. We're putting that in there because our travel brochures, as you can see in 2019, we did a reorder for that amount of 40 grand. We have 2 pallets left of those, but when that's out, we'll have to do a redesign or just an update and a reprint. And Robert thinks it could be as soon as like October of next year, but we might make it through next year. So that's what that's for. So that'd be ordering thousands of travel planners to send out. And then these 2 items, travel shows and international travel shows. Historically, that's been Elaine traveling to travel-related conventions so that we're aware of what's going on in the world of travel and sales-oriented things there. So, for example, the biggest expense in 2019, she spent almost 50 grand on travel shows and almost 20 grand on international travel shows. Last year, she budgeted 30 grand for travel shows and 15 grand for international travel shows. And so I took that number and just bumped it down a little bit to 20,000 for travel shows, 10,000 for international travel shows, and Melissa will probably be doing the bulk of that. But also that's an estimate. I don't have like a list of events that would be. Then there's Moab Tourism Expo, which I guess historically, I just kind of heard about this from staff, historically kind of a small gathering at Star Hall with local tourism folks in the community to get together and get an idea of what's new. So last year I requested 3,000, spent 0. I just put the same amount in there. And then here's on grant expenditures. This is the other side of that anticipated grant receipt from UOT for the co-op marketing grant. So this would be bolstering the ad spend for 2022. Then this premiums for 6,230. Historically, that's gone towards like the Do It Like a Local mugs, T-shirts, bag, kind of any kind of materials swag that we bring to marketing events or hand out at conferences and stuff. 6 grand was budgeted last year, spent 0. So I just wanted to put some money in there for our office to be able to have high quality things to bring with us to these kinds of travel shows and to those types of things. Okay, I got this wrong. So this is a travel brochure reprint, this 35 grand. The 30 grand up top for the postage is actually the anticipated annual spend on the postage to send those travel brochures out. So that's what that Pitney Bowes machine does and why we need it, because hand posting all of those things takes a long time. And then there's this dues and memberships category that historically has kind of jumped all over the place. I put 20 grand in to overestimate because I don't entirely know what we're subscribed to, what we owe money on. But that seemed to be the largest spend in 2019. And then these three at the bottom for, Sun Parks, scenic byways, those two I think are just kind of like membership. They probably should be in dues and memberships. Sun Parks, I believe, was kind of pre-Mighty Five. All of the destination marketing organizations of all the parks kind of working together to promote themselves. I don't know what activity is going on there, but that's what we budgeted last year, so I just threw it in there just in case we owe somebody some money. And then scenic byways, I don't know what that program is, but similarly, I think it's probably a similar type of activity. And then MIC extension / hours, I'm not entirely sure what's in there, but I just.
Well, that's it's a contribution to the MIC for somebody to keep the MIC open after hours, I guess, because it's the only public restroom in that particular area.
So is that distinct from the 38 grand contribution to MIC from the other fund?
Yeah, so there are two different contributions. The other is just sort of a straight up subsidy, I guess, for the MIC. And then this one's the one that's specific to the after hours, keeping the bathrooms open.
Okay. And then locator boards, I guess, is some kind of maintenance expense for the locator boards in the city that we put information in.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of this.
That's that one, and then diversification, it should be quicker.
Yeah. Anybody have any more questions on this one before we move on?
So we're that $400,000 for advertising. How was that derived?
That was basically addressing all of the other needs that were in here, and that just kind of what was there.
We also moved the billboard expense out of admin and put it into this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand the billboard expense.
So I mean, this would be actual ad placement, so if we placed ads in the airports that might be part of the grant, but this is, the traditional ad spend.
Yeah, so that would be
Okay,
like our matching.
I'm just curious why it's 400 rather than 600 or 200. I mean, how?
Sure. So honestly, it was just kind of going through the other prioritized needs from historical spend, as well as what the Travel Council Advisory Board recommended, and then trying to zero out on the other side with our revenues. And that was kind of what we got to.
So you're saying it's what was left over after all the other expenses?
Yeah, while still trying to ensure that it was a priority spend, as the Travel Council Advisory Board did. I indicated it's a priority spend, but so it could have been more perhaps, but putting in these new programs such as the local advertising program, and on all of that. So yeah, that's probably not a very useful answer, but.
Well, yeah, all the other things we just went over is tourism promotion also, and all the stuff for staff and love. That's all, the development of marketing that culminates in ad placement, which, largely would come out of that line. Obviously, there's a lot of other tourism promotion activities going on as well. There, probably be more ad spend also in the grant line that's specific to the cooperative marketing grant. So this is another, probably predominantly ad spend amount right here, according to that cooperative agreement with the UOT.
And to be clear, that 150 is a projected grant receipt for next year for a grant we have not applied for.
Okay. And then something separate I was curious about. I think the previous thing we looked at, the administration seemed to be $800,000, and this is close to $1 million. But doesn't that add up to more than the 7/15ths, or am I remembering the numbers wrong? Is this over budget?
Shouldn't be. Let me bring up my spreadsheet. again.
Well, the
Right.
number is going to be higher because we have two different grant revenues. So we have the 200,000 rural county grant and the 150 UOT grant. So we should be all exactly 350 over.
Okay, yeah, no, that might account for the difference. Yeah.
I mean, what I did was nail down the budget for rec film and conventions, nail down the constraints on the budget for rec film conventions and the constraints for economic diversification. So those two budgets are calculated exactly according to those two constraints. There's no constraint in state law on how much we can spend on tourism promotion.
Right.
So it's basically what's left over after we maximize those two economic diversification and rec film convention budgets.
Okay, but in particular, this table plus the one for administration do not, adds up to
The 1.4.
not more than 7/15 plus the other grants.
Yeah, should.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Oh. Were you ready to, do you have any more questions on that one?
Well, yeah, I guess back to the, this ad spending, that's kind of big and amorphous. I mean, is that something that the commission is going to approve in the future, and this is just some placeholder, or is this like giving off, if we approve this budget, is it authorizing those ad buys to be made?
That's the way it's worked in the past, the latter. So, if the commission wants to approve the advertising beforehand, then we should, revise our advertising policy that we passed last year to reflect that.
I will say, I think my thought on how I want to go forward with this to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that our team's able to kind of do our thing effectively within the bounds of what the commission's hoping to get out of our ad spend and what the community and the tourism community is hoping to get out of the ad spend is having a workshop with commissioners and other stakeholders that includes probably starting with just the commissioners and our staff to kind of show historically what we've spent, what that ad spend has gone to, what the content is, making sure that it fits the education ordinance, and kind of getting on the same page ahead of time with the strategy for what that ad spend can look like and making that a collaborative effort. And then this budget would just basically activate that strategy. And obviously there's no statute or ordinance to mandate that. That's just what I want to do this next year.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess my concerns, one, I do think that the commission should be exercising more fine-grained control on what advertising actually happens. And I think the sort of transition that we're going through now is a really good time to do that.
Totally.
And I also just want to, I mean, this is a hot topic in Moab. It comes up when people are running for election or re-election. So I guess I would want to have more discussion in the deliberation about this $400,000 figure. Well, and I guess all the ad spending,
right.
And also in the context of how much other flexibility we have within, the state code to spend this money.
Right. And I think I was thinking about that, and it's like, that's ad spend, but we're spending money like on the 100,000 on the consulting services. That's going to Love Communications to develop ad spend marketing strategies. It's not going to put an ad on a billboard, but it's a part of the same strategy. So I feel like that 400, historically, like this line item number has been like the hot button number, but they're all interrelated. I don't know if that's useful, but I think I want to also pursue a strategy of public outreach and transparency of like, this is actually what this department is spending stuff on. And so it's clear and people understand what TRT is, where it's coming from, and how it's being spent. But I'm hearing where you're coming from, Kevin. I'm on the same page.
Okay. So I assume, Chris, you'll help us figure out when the appropriate times are to discuss these things in more detail.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like potentially we might need a whole sort of workshop topic on this in November. I usually, will try to, it depends on how much work we have to do with the commission, but I mean, I could definitely foresee like 4 budget meetings in November, just with the commission, to go over a wide variety of things. Because there's going to be, a lot to prioritize and a lot of decision points this year. But, the entire tourism promotion budget could be a component of that, just almost a workshop in and of itself. And, like I said, we're not just talking about the budget, but also, potential policy revisions.
Yeah, no, I think at a minimum, we should maybe revise the advertising policy to give the commission more of a role in deciding what ads and what the content is. I mean, if that's in place, then I'm not too worried about I'm less worried about the overall budget number, because that's not, it doesn't yet have the green light to be spent, so.
Yeah, and so, that's a policy consideration there, which would be pretty easy to, implement. It's just, it depends, on whether or not, the commission's going to approve things in a meeting, or whether there's going to be a committee formed or whatever,
Mhm.
So Kevin, I'd love offline after this meeting to follow up. I know we never got a one-on-one, so I'd love to set up some time to just
Sure,
chat
yeah,
through what your thoughts are.
let's talk as soon as possible.
Okay.
Okay, we're closing in on 5. Let's try to.
I'm ready. All right, this one's more straightforward. Obviously I didn't deal with salaries and employee benefits. That got put in there by Chris. But it includes about 100 grand for a potential role filling the historically kind of part-time and not all that useful business technical assistance position that we've had. We just want to basically ensure that there's a really high quality person in our community to assist local business startups do everything they need to do, get loans, build P&Ls for grant applications, stuff like that. So that's what that 100K is for.
So this is a kind of this is all just placeholder. When we move the budget over, we'll build a real budget. But these are the main categories for diversification. This 335,000 is kind of what's remaining out of the projection of the 1/3 of the 37%, which is 1,050,000. And so we have, a total, I guess, of 335,000, almost 336 that could go towards salaries and benefits for August, Ben, and if we do enter into an agreement with the state for the small business development center employee, then that would be in there also. Then August is proposing doing an economic development master plan using this money.
Yeah, so I didn't know John had actually budgeted money for that. So whether it goes here or there, I'm agnostic to.
No, I think, you guys can work on that and should come out of this budget.
Okay. And the 65 is an estimate. I want to double check with John what he thinks that should cost, but that's what they're paying for the land use code consulting project.
It depends on how extensive you want it to be. I mean, the way that it works for plan development is that you set the budget. When you go out to bid, the companies are going to ask, well, how much is your budget? And then they'll develop a proposal that, matches your budget.
Fair enough. Okay.
It's really, up to you how extensive you want it to be. Because the people that respond to the request for proposal are going to, build their proposal based on the budget. If you put a budget of 100,000 in, then all the bids will come in at 100,000. It's always going to come in at whatever the budget is.
Right.
And so you just have to decide how extensive you want it to be.
Okay, that sounds good to me. I think for now this feels good, and if I guess I should mention. Let's just go through this. That's good for now. Then maybe let's go bottom up for the rest of this. So the 500,000, is a local business expansion program. So this is what was recommended by our Diversification Advisory Council after the development master plan. It includes a 40K match for the fiscal year 22 Rural County Grant Program. The intention of this is that this would go towards expanding non-tourism businesses in our area, tying that money, whether it's grant or rotating loan fund, to specific metrics such as job increase, job retention, salary increase, housing, maybe if that's legal, probably not. So that's what that's about. And that's kind of like the bigger project, so we can start getting good numbers to justify this program to the state in 5 years' time. Put $100,000 in for a workforce development program. This could be building off of what exists between CTE at the Grand County Public School program, as well as CTE at USU, and trying to build add on to that or support those things, or kind of other things that make sense, such as the Rural Online Initiative, anything else that tries to address our workforce issues in the community. And then lastly, 50 grand for marketing these programs. So doing events, social media, print ad, to get people to show up, be engaged, and know about this diversification project that we're doing. Because at this point, a lot of people just hear diversification and don't really know what that means. So I felt that some sort of marketing spend would be really important. Yeah.
So a lot of this, it still need to be developed, and August is working on that, and he's, got plans to spend more time with other economic development offices. And so this is sort of like broad category budgeting here. And, a lot of the details will still need to be worked out. But I think it's a good start. Anybody have any questions on the diversification budget? I mean, a lot of it's going to be salary and benefits, which we haven't really calculated out yet. But once we figure that out, we might, have to make cuts here, or we'll have extra money that we can allocate down. Kind of depends on how salary and benefits shake out, and whether or not we can enter into an agreement with the state for the Small Business Development Center position. So some things up in the air. We all good on that? So I'll just quickly
Yes.
bump in. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just said, yes, I'm good on that.
Okay. Then with Thompson, just a little bit of a budget. Again, I'll need to calculate what their actual balance is, and the balance in their fund will be their budget on this side. So this is just kind of a bit of a placeholder. But for the last 5 minutes, I just wanted to go over what we got from the Tribal Council Advisory Board as recommendations. And for the most part, it's pretty close to what's in the budget now. So try to go over some of this.
And Chris, I haven't officially submitted this to anybody. Do you need me to send an email to the county commission, or?
Yeah, we'll send it on. I mean, I think when we have the meeting with the commission, this will be a part of the packet materials for that meeting. But we'll just go over it now. So they officially approved this, though, right?
Yep, it was drafted, voted on, amended, and ratified.
Okay. So as far as impact mitigation for TRT, they're proposing, that we just use that money as we have to offset costs for law enforcement, solid waste, search and rescue, museum, etc. So they didn't really have much suggestion there. Then for tourism promotion, salaries and overhead for the Tribal Council staff, continued marketing program, development of a local business marketing program, which August went over. I think it was, 50,000 or something like that?
Yeah, we put 55
Then also the same for event funding, so this would be the marketing side of event funding. And then dashboard for economic data and indicators, which we also went over, and that would include USU and Love. Then for establishing and promoting rec film and conventions, making our contribution for the hotspot pilot shuttle program to the city. They did recommend that we pick up the film commission. Recommended continuing to engage with responsible recreation program. Establishing rec film and convention resources, which you remember August did put in. And understanding tourism and usage patterns. I do believe that we moved this up to the tourism promotion end of things, right, August?
That's correct.
So this one, we ended up budgeting this one up in tourism promotion. That's one difference between this budget and what they requested or advised on. And then diversification, salaries and overhead for economic development department, so that's in there. Master plan and local business expansion program, so these are all covered in the budget that we just went over. And then they do have a couple of requests for TRCC. And again, this is a sticky one because we could use this to offset our general fund needs. And so we'll have to, again, the commission will have to decide, well, for one, we need to know, I think if the stage can be a TRT expense or not. I'm not sure. We'd have to get with Christina. Certainly qualifies as a TRCC expense. And then also pickleball courts. And so these will be questions in the TRCC budget and potentially TRT, depending on what Christina says about this. But again, you just got to realize that the TRCC budget, the total that I'm projecting in TRCC is not more than the total expenses of OSTA and the Grand Center. And so if we diverted TRCC away from those two departments, then it would impact our general fund's bottom line. Not to say that that's not possible or advisable, but just as a note. I just wanted to go over the Tribal Council Advisory Board's recommendations. For the most part, what they've advised on is in the budget currently.
Yeah, and I just wanted to briefly just highlight their kind of, as I've transitioned into the director of this department and kind of, I'm not a voting member of this board, but a coordinating member of the board. Certainly, they've been very interested and engaged in this, the ask of doing what statute asks of them to do this list of prioritized expenditures. And I think they felt really good about getting insight from Chris on the budget and figuring out a good way to make recommendations as part of the process.
Yeah, they've been good to work with.
I'll echo that. They've been very receptive and seem to very much on our page is on lots of things. A little, they've done more in the last little bit than they've done for years, I think.
Yeah, and I guess one other thing. So this is a revised. Let's see. Did they revise their request for the Film Commission to be paid? Originally, they wanted it to come out of diversification, but did they change that?
Yeah. So originally they put Film Commission under diversification, and then the language on responsible recreation and the establishing XYZ resources. The language just is a little different. So I reviewed this with Chris, and he made some recommendations that I posed to the advisory board, and they accepted the changes and revised the original proposal.
All right. So yeah, we're almost entirely synced in. There's just maybe a couple minor differences, but.
And I honestly think if we brought that to them, revise it, accept it. So.
All right. Okay. Anything else? Anybody wants to discuss about the economic development budget? It's a pretty big one, and we'll probably have to revisit it with the commission, but. And it's 5:01. Quitting time. We all good? Okay. It's
I'm good.
5:01.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. And I'm going to close this October 15th, 2021 session of the Budget Advisory Board. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening and a good weekend.
Thanks so much, Chris.